Yo, what is going on? How's everybody doing today? Thank y'all for tuning in to another DLE Fitness live stream show. Let's go. Let me get that going. Where is it at? There it is. Today we got a late night show action going on for you tonight. Had to get this one in regardless of how late it is. This show is going to take me a good while to get this one done, but we got to make it happen. And yeah, there's nothing else to do but do it, but we have to get this one taken care of. But for sure, we do got a good show lined up for you. It is a late night on a, well, let's say Wednesday at this point, but it's technically crossed over into Thursday. So yeah, I would check on you with Mr. Chow, but I don't think you're having a good or bad day. But if you're in New Zealand or somewhere across the globe where you see sunlight outside and you're at work or something, whatever the case may be, we'll run it by you anyway with Mr. Chow. If you're on a different side of the world or a different continent over, hopefully you're having a good day. And if you're not having a good day, then let Mr. Chow break it down to you.
Oh, you're having a bad day? Did you die?
I got shot.
But did you die?
And as long as you did not get unalive, you're still here, you're still with us, and you're still ready to make something happen. So let's go. Ladies and gentlemen, today's gonna be a long one. We're gonna make this one work. We're gonna get it done. We're gonna make it do what it do. Have a real big point to get, well, not a point to get across, but a show to get across. And as you can see, we'll be simultaneously streaming on 4 platforms: YouTube, Twitch, Kick, and Rumble. If you're on YouTube, do me a favor. When you see that thumbs up button come up, hit the... Wait, I got to do the other finger now because it's not working on that one. When you see the thumbs up button come, do me a favor, hit that like button. If you're on YouTube, if you're on Twitch, Kick, or Rumble, give a follow. Greatly appreciated. If you want to contribute to today's show, you can hop over to YouTube and do a super chat, or right here, contribute to the Cash App and Venmo. Cash App is going to be Daniel2888. Venmo, Daniel-00. Yes, sir. Let's go. Now, if you didn't see the thumbnail, today's show is going to be titled The She Economy and Communism is what we're going to go over today. And that's what we're going to sit down and talk about to give a good breakdown and a good understanding on how basically what it's seeming like how the world is going to be moving towards in the future. But we're going to give a full breakdown and a good thorough understanding of what each of the components are. So we're going to start off with the she economy first. Then we're going to slide right on over and we're going to get different understandings on how it's working and exactly how it could also have a deep underlining meaning that could tie it in to communism later on down the line. So we're going to sit down and dissect all of this. This is going to take a good while. I'm not in a rush. I'm going to take my sweet time and we're going to get through this. So sit back, relax, buckle up, because we have a lot to cover. So it's only going to be one topic. Normally I cover 3 topics: fitness, economy, and AI. But today we're not covering all that. Like I said, it's late. It's past midnight where I'm at. So this is going to be a late night show. I don't ever do shows this late ever. I'll be in bed by this time. But this one has to get done. I probably want to be able to find time to do it tomorrow throughout the week because I got stuff going on. So I was like, I need to get this show done. So if it takes me 4 or 5 hours up into the wee hours of the morning, then so be it. But this has to get done. So let's go ahead and get this thing cracking. So before we do, let's get our sexy ladies to welcome us into the economy segment of the show. Let's go.
Welcome to the economy segment of the show. Enjoy.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, let's get it started. So we are going to start off with the she economy. Yes, she economy. The women is out here getting it in, stacking that paper. They winning. They have taken over in spending and in making money. They are doing their thing. They kicking ass and taking names. They getting educated. They focus on their education. They focusing on their finances. They are doing what they supposed to be doing. You know, they getting it in, so you can't hate on that. You got to appreciate that. They getting their money, so you should be doing the same thing too. Don't hate, congratulate. So with that being said, let's get an understanding on what the she economy is. So for starters, I got this here for you up on the screen. This is a what is this? This is a what's the word I'm trying to say? Article from, who is this? PR Newswire. All right, it's going to be defining what's next in the 31.5 trillion she economy, published on March 18th, 2025. All right, so let's go ahead and dive in on what the she economy is and how this works. All righty, and we're going to see where it is in the state of today's time. So let me go ahead and zoom in and make sure you can see that well before I start reading. I think that's good enough. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So we got this right here. New York, March 18th, 2025. The year 2024 marked this tipping point in a recognition of the power of the female purse, officially outpacing men in both income and spending. Women's cultural and economic influence can no longer be ignored. While women's spending power has been a long driving force in the global economy, 2024 was the year that brands and marketers truly recognized and began to act on its full potential, with women influencing over 85% of global consumer purchasing decisions, an estimated $31.5 trillion in their purchasing decisions, shaping industries from entertainment to finance. Companies that prioritize authentic engagement saw an unparalleled growth and loyalty. Let's go. That's what I'm talking about. So now we have this. Under the theme, Accurate Representation 3.0, the pathway to growth, this year's event will showcase what's next driving the she economy, the next trends in women's sports, and the enduring impact of the Taylor Swift's effect on the global economy. To stay ahead of the curve and not to be left behind, brands need to get involved and explore how authentic representation fuels business growth, deepens consumer connections, and reshapes industries. Accurate representation is a business imperative. Brands that prioritize authentic portrayals of women will be the ones to win in today's competitive market. This meeting is a call to action for leaders across media, advertising, and entertainment to leverage representation as a growth strategy. And you can see that being put in, especially in wrestling today. This year, See Her welcomes a robust and verified group of experts, influencers, executives, and cultural commentators, such as Mark Pritchard, Nick Kelly, Saigon Kane, Brian West, and Cindy Gallup, all who will dive deep into the accurate representation is crucial for growth. Topics this year's the meeting will tackle will include the Taylor Swift side effect, women's sports, girls in gaming. Additional speakers will include, and has all these names. And then about See Her. See Her was launched in 2016 by the Association of National Advertisers. See Her coalition of leaders is committed to improving the accurate representation and portrayal of women and girls to drive business growth. To help its members benchmark success and become catalysts for change, See Her spearheaded the development of Gender Equality Measures, GEM, the first research methodology that quantifies gender bias in ads and programming. A winner of the prestigious SMR Research Effectiveness Award, GEMS is the global measure standard, providing that content accurately portraying women and girls dramatically increases purchase intent and brand reputation. See Her suite of training and resource, including GEM, enables marketers to prioritize best practices as part of an always-on approach to driving growth. The movement includes the following vertical expertise: See Her in sports, See Her in entertainment, See Her health, and See Her media task force. And then you can visit this website. The Anna's mission is About Anna. About Anna, and the Anna's mission is to drive growth for marketing professionals, for brands and businesses, and for the industry. Growth is foundational for all participants in the ecosystem. The Anna seeks to align those interests by leveraging the 12-point Anna Growth Agenda, which has been endorsed and embraced by Anna Board of Directors and Global CMO Growth Councils. The Anna's membership consists of over 1,400 domestic and international companies, including more than 900 client-side marketers and nonprofit fundraisers and 500 marketing solution providers, data science and technology companies, ad agencies, publishers, media companies, suppliers, and vendors. Collectively, and member companies represent 20,000 brands, engage 50,000 industry professionals, and invest more than $400 billion in marketing and advertising annually. Event highlights: we have the Keystone speaker, we have the Women's Sports in Focus, we have a fireside chat with Brian West, we have the power of representation in media and advertising, we have for all ages and life stages, an exclusive panel on digital safety for girls. All right, so that's where we at right now. So See Her is basically who's going to be pushing this. See Her brings USA Today, Taylor Swift report, and all this good stuff. And let's real quick, what is the Taylor Swift effect? Let's see. Does it tell us what it is? I don't know what. I really don't know what it is. I don't know what the Taylor Swift effect is, but Taylor's impact only reinforces the power of women as an economic force, opportunities for business, and authentically engage with them. Okay, well, I guess it just is speaking on the power that Taylor Swift has on the economy right now, because she does have a really big influence. So I guess that's what that's referring to. So we have an understanding of what the she economy is and how it is kicking ass right now in 2025, and will be the direction that we'll be going moving forward, which it's been this way for a while. We've seen the progression of it go on and on and on and on and on and on. So with that being said, when we see, hold on, should we get a little bit closer? Yeah, let's get a little bit closer. Let's do that. I think that's good. One more. That's straight. All right, cool. So now that we see that we have the she economy and we understand exactly what the she economy is, let's dive in a little bit deeper to see what happens when we have an economy that is empowered by women having a high economic standard. So we're going to start off with our first person. This is going to be Dr. Wendy Walsh. This video is going to be a 12-year-old video. So this video is from 12 years ago. But we're going to have Wendy Walsh explain practically the mindset of said type of women who are basically going to be implementing the she economy. She's not going to describe all women, but I would assume the majority of women. So let's go ahead and let Dr. Wendy Walsh explain this from her perspective. So let's go ahead and get this pulled up. Let me switch that banner off. I had the wrong banner. All right. And let her take it away. Here we go.
Today, we're living in what I call a high supply sexual economy. What's that? Well, it's where the price of sex has dropped so low because sex is in such high supply. Remember, like in my grandmother's generation, the price of sex was probably a year or more of courtship. In my generation, it was 3 dates. Remember the 3-date rule, folks? Well, today, the price of sex has dropped to the barrel bottom price of one well-worded text. Now, why has the price of sex become so cheap? Why is it in such high supply? Actually, there's good news to it. It's a byproduct of the economic rise of women. When women rise in economic power, they put sex out in the culture in high supply. When women are disadvantaged and repressed, they either close their legs and wait for a man to sign on the bottom line and support them and their offspring in something called marriage, or they monetize their vagina because prostitution rates go up. So when women are disadvantaged, you tend to have higher rates of marriage, virginity is coveted, more children are born within wedlock, and prostitution rates go way up. In fact, it's been estimated in Victorian England, the height of great economic progress, for men that is, that there was 1 prostitute for every 12 men in England. That's how big the business was. Funny, today we shop at a store called Victoria's Secret. Anyway, so now we have a different phenomenon. We have a huge rise of women in America. For every 2 men that graduate college, there are 3 women. Women make up 3/5 of graduate students. In the age 22 to 32 demographic, women make more money than their male peers. And women are now the majority in the American workforce. I know a lot of expensive men were laid off in the recession, but there are more of us making money now. So as a result, we don't need marriage. Women do not need a man to sign on the dotted line, support them and their offspring in a long-term contract called marriage so they can finally enjoy the pleasures of their body. This sounds wonderful, right? This is all good news, sort of. Except two things happen to men in a high-supply sexual economy. The first thing is they lose ambition. Because historically, one of the reasons why young men compete against other young men to extract resources from the environment is so that they can afford more women or have access to higher status women. So now a dude can sit until the age of 30 or later in his mother's basement playing Xbox, asking you to text in a naked picture of yourself. I swear it's happening. I met a guy who was 40 and doing that, mother's basement and all. The other thing that happens to men is they not only lose ambition, but they lose the ability to commit. Newsflash, people, men do not have a fertility window. Guys in their 40s, they can ride this wave of free sex well into their 40s or later and then marry a younger woman when they decide, if they do, that they want a family. So the high supply sexual economy in the end actually hurts women. And the only way to cure it is to practice slow love.
Okay, so as you heard, the female economy is doing really, really well. And this is from 12 years ago, okay? 12 years ago. Sorry, I'm coming down from a sickness, so I'm going to sound a little bit, under the weather and groggy, but yeah, whatever. So she's speaking on how the sexual nature of a society is whenever women are financially the breadwinners, when they're in charge, when they're the main ones making the money, especially in the ages of, I think she said 22 and 32. She said that women are outperforming men financially in the ages of 22 and 32. 22 and 32 is what we all know is that's a woman's prime years. You know what I mean? From especially the earlier, the mid, really the whole 20s, we will say. So they're financially on top right now, and they're financially on top as far as how they're going to be instructing how the world sees things and how things are going to be going forward. Now, as she mentioned, sexually, that's gonna be put out into the world more. We're gonna see a whole lot more smegs going on, and I mean, you can't deny that. What she said is true. The more money women make, the more smegs gets put out into the air. So therefore, higher, I guess you could say, higher promiscuity going on. More relationships, more hookups and casual flings are going to be happening a whole lot, which that goes hand in hand. We can see that via social media like crazy. We can see the advent of OnlyFans and Fansly and all these different avenues. We can see it, so that's something that you can't deny. And then she mentioned the two pitfalls of it with men. Men won't be as ambitious, and also men won't see the need to commit. So if you have a lot of women doing a whole lot better than men, and not so many men rising to the occasion, then it's going to cause a supply and demand issue. And one way we could look at a supply and demand issue would be through this right here. So right here, what I have is a smexual, got to use code words, smexual economics. This is a 2004 copyright by Lawrence Erlbaum. This right here shows smegs as female resources for social exchange and heterosexual interaction. So smexual economics. So we have this right here. And if we dive deeper and go in, we'll look at a expert called supply and demand. So right here, supply and demand. This is what it states right here. The laws of supply and demand can be substantiated in all sorts of marketplaces, and there's no reason that smegs should be an exception. With smegs, the female resource hypothesis depicts that women constitute and supply, the men constitute the demand. So women constitute the supply and men constitute the demand. Patterns of smexual activity should change drastically with the balance between supply and demand, such as the smegs ratio. When the pool of eligible women is much larger than the pool of eligible men, supply can then be said to exceed demand. Basic economics. The price will therefore drop, which means that men will be able to obtain smegs without giving or promising much in return. In contrast, a shortage of eligible women relative to men means that the demand outstrips supply, so the price is likely to be high. Thus, contrary to any simple view that the power in the marketplace depends on having a majority, the price of SMEGs will tend to favor the minority gender. More precisely, men will give women more resources for SMEGs when men outnumber women than when women outnumber men. Okay, it's pretty basic right up front. That's what we all understand as basic economics in a supply and demand cycle. So now, let's see here. What do we do? And then right here, we take it one step further. So now that you have a supply and demand, we see the she economy, the woman is dominating. The woman is doing better than the man, and therefore the woman is dictating a whole lot of spending as far as consumer spending and money making. So on both sides, women are winning. Plus in school, women are dominating the school education realm as well. And this is what we're moving forward to in. Well, if that's happening, this is going to probably most likely play a part in the situation. The supply and demand is going to change, as well as how women see the benefit for SMEGs. So we're looking at the same document. In another section of the same document, they have something titled SMEGs as benefit. So let's read the benefit that women will have since they're going to be in control, or at least dominating, the she economy that we have going on moving forward. So it says right here, if SMEGs is a female resource, then men will be more likely than women to regard obtaining SMEGs as a positive benefit. A relevant study by Sedekaides, Oliver, and Campbell surveyed young people about the costs and benefits of romantic relationships. Consistent with the social exchange view, they found that men were more likely than women to describe SMEGs as benefit of participating in such relationships. In fact, women generally did not rate SMEGs as a benefit at all. Thus, although romantic relationships yield sexual satisfaction to both men and women, only men regarded it as one of the principal benefits of such relationships. Women did not rate SMEGs as a cost. As a cost in the study. In other words, SMEGs was a benefit for men, but neither a cost nor a benefit to a woman. This must be kept in mind lest one exaggerates the dimensions of social exchange. Women certainly desire and enjoy SMEGs too, especially within relationships. The principle of least interest is relevant. Both men and women desire SMEGs, but because SMEGs is more readily available to women and hence not a sacred good, not a scarce good, they are less likely than men to perceive it as an important benefit of relationships. Okay. So one thing that was a big deal right here, it says that this right here, women certainly desire and enjoy SMEGs too, especially within relationships. Well, inside of a she economy, it's going to be the women majority will be outperforming the men. So it will be less men performing at high levels and more women performing at higher levels. More women will be outdoing the men in the economy. So then that would cause a supply and demand issue. It would be more women for less men. So therefore the men who are successful won't have to worry about committing. And then if you have men who don't have their stuff together, but still have equipment that could satisfy the woman, yes, she can still use him. However, she'll financially still be doing better than him. So psychologically, she'll get tired of it. Eventually, over due time, she'll get tired of it because she's not getting anything out of it except getting packed out, just getting, banged out like crazy. But as far as the men who are financially doing well than her, she probably won't be able to, a lot of women won't be able to obtain a commitment because then there's less men that are successful and more women are doing well. the men won't have no reason to settle down. And then the women can still, they can still have a roster, do what they want to do, same as the men. So therefore, it would cause, I would say, a huge slowdown in, like dating and marriage and a family bearing. So we'll have a she economy, but I think families are going to get put on the back burner. But let's continue. So with that being said, let's go on to the next thing that we have right here. So with the same lady, she speaks on this right here, and she speaks on the differences in men and women's sexuality. Let's see what she has to say on this short clip. Here we go.
When I talk about the 30-day love detox and when I talk about slow love, so often I hear a woman say, but what about my needs? What about my sexual needs? Why should I slow down and not have sex? Well, it's important to understand that men and women have very different kinds of sexuality and their needs are very different. Unfortunately, too many women in our modern culture have adopted a male model of everything that includes a male model of sexuality. Even men aren't happy sometimes for the pressure that they get to take all sex, at any cost. Men's sexuality is very different from women's. Men's a little more like basic plumbing. They need the pipes cleaned every once in a while, whether it's once a day, whether it's twice a week, whether it's once a month. All men are different, but it's sort of a routine pipe cleaning. Women's sexuality is very different. It's responsive, meaning it gets suppressed and it gets activated again when you meet an object in the environment that you're excited by. Sometimes women's needs for sexuality is actually a need for companionship. Sometimes women desire to be desired and they have sex to have the attention. Just to prove that women's sexuality is a complicated mix of biology, psychology, and cultural pressure, no pharmaceutical company has ever come up with anything that enhances the female libido. It's just too complicated. So it's important for women to learn to respect their biology and to understand that hooking up with a guy you are not really into for a long-term relationship is not female sexual power. That's an equality trap. Female sexual power is respecting your biology.
Okay, one thing I want to go back to is something that she pointed out about right here in this range. I want you to listen to what she says right here. Let me play it back.
Psychology and cultural pressure. No pharmaceutical company has sexuality is actually an environment that you're excited by. Sometimes women's needs for sexuality is actually a need for companionship.
A woman's need for sexuality is a need for companionship. Well, there's not really going to be any men that are going to be really good companions for the amount of women that are going to be out there. But let's let it continue.
Sometimes women desire to be desired and they have sex to have the attention.
That will always, they'll always be able to get the attention. So they'll have the money, they'll still be able to get the attention, but from whom? Because if they're financially well off above a lot of the men, then the few men that are at the top that are doing, if not as good as them or better, or really better than them, then they're not really gonna get what they want. Because the hypergamous nature, they have to get somebody above them, maybe on their level, but mainly above them. But it's not going to be that many because the she economy is dominating. I mean, we just read it's $31.5 trillion moving forward. That's a vast amount of money. Okay. So with that being said, having influence, clearly relationships are going to take a hard hit with the she economy moving forward. There's just no other way to look at it. That's just going to be a factor of life. It is what it is. Whether call it good or bad, it doesn't matter. It's just the economic cycle that we're going through. We're just accepting it for what it is. We're not calling it good. We're not calling it bad. We're just calling it acceptance. This is what it's going to be moving forward. Okay. This is what it's going to be. You know what I mean? A lot of men will get weeded out. And a lot of women will realize that they not only have the power and the control of the finances, but now they have the power control over who is going to bring babies into this world. You know what I mean? Like they've already had that power, but add the finances to it. You know what I mean? Plus the togetherness of technology, how they can collectively, think and have secret chat rooms and all this stuff together. So collectively they'll have all of that together and with the, what is it? The advent of all different kind of birth controls and stuff like that, and IUDs and all that stuff, they're able to dictate and control, like, okay, I know if I want a baby with this guy or not. Like, they have full control over that. So they can basically dictate with the small pool of men who's going to basically bring their children forth. And if you're a guy who is not on her level, but she still likes how you pound it out, she can make it to where, like, it doesn't matter what you do. She'll have an IUD in, and you'll never bring a baby in. She has that power and control. You know what I mean? Now, another thing I want to look at is the same document that we just looked at, but we're going to look at another section of the document, which is going to be titled Sexual Revolution. So let's go ahead and look at this right here and get an understanding on this and how this works. It is well documented that the sexual attitudes and behaviors underwent a significant shift toward the greater permissiveness during the third quarter of the 20th century. Moreover, the shift was much larger among women than men. This change, called the sexual revolution, undoubtedly had multiple cases, including the invention of oral contraceptives for women. Still, the birth control pill is not a full explanation, because it cannot easily explain the shift towards greater acceptance of practices that do not risk pregnancy, such as oral SMEGs. If SMEGs is a female resource, then the sexual revolution was a market correction, in which the exchange price of SMEGs was significantly reduced. In terms of social exchange theory, a likely reason is that changes in women's circumstances reduced their dependency on SMEGs as their most valuable resource. In the 1860s, for example, American women had relatively few options for securing a comfortable life for themselves. They were not able to vote, own property, initiate lawsuits, pursue a profitable career, and the like. A century later, women's liberation had progressed to the point by which women had all those rights and could provide for themselves reasonably well. Hence, their need to get the highest possible price for SMEGs was greatly reduced, and they could begin to offer SMEGs more freely and enjoy it themselves, which is what they want. They want to enjoy it themselves. Now, they may also want a commitment on the back end, but you can't have it all. It doesn't work that way. Very few may get it all the way around, but it's a small number. Even though the sexual revolution occurred in the context of many positive changes for women overall, this analysis could still regard the change in SMEGs itself as disadvantageous to women, insofar as one of their resources, SMEGs, was devalued. Consistent with that views, polls and studies consistently found that women regarded the sexual revolutions more negatively than men and had more doubts and regrets about it. Thus, even though the sexual revolution has often been presented as a boom to women, and in some ways was, many women have recognized it as a costly sacrifice, or at best, a mixed blessing. Whew. Wow, a mixed blessing. That's crazy. It's either one or the other, but they said a mixed blessing. So, as you can see, the mindset of the women moving forward in the she economy. More women are going to be dominating financially. Less men will not be dominating. So, that's the economic side of things, and that's how things are going to be moving forward. Now, as we see these things happen, there's also a underlying current as far as how things are going to go, because as you see, there's always this big problem with patriarchy and capitalism and all this stuff. People have a lot of women have an issue with capitalism, and women seem to swing a little bit more towards community and group and togetherness. Women are not big. Women don't really like to compete as much as men do. And as far as grinding and working really hard, they'll get tired of it in the later years. So, with that being said, the grind in the long run is good for the men. The grind in the short run is good for the women. However, the way that the political side of things will change from capitalism, if we shift over to communism, that usually is going to be predicated on who is making and spending the money. In this case, it's going to be women, the she economy. That's what's going to drive the political force. Whoever's got the money is going to drive the politics. That's just a well-known fact. There's no way around that. So as we see this and we move forward, we're going to take a look and get a better understanding on the different aspects of communism, because there's more than one aspect of communism, just like there's more than one aspect of capitalism. There's good capitalism and there's bad. Same thing with communism. There's good and there's bad. You can, if you can use something for bad, you can use it for good. If you use something for good, you can use it for bad. So let's take a look and get a understanding on exactly how capitalism, Marxism, socialism, whatever you want to call it, socialism, get an understanding of what that is. And then we're going to get an understanding of how it works. And we're going to see if this is going to be implemented in the she economy and if everybody is potentially on the same page. So we're going to get an understanding of it first right here. We're going to look at this video. This video is basically a understanding of liberal feminism in an international relations. So we're going to start with this one first to get a good understanding of liberal feminism versus Marxist feminism, because there's two different kinds, and we're going to see if these two mindsets work in tangent or are they completely opposite of each other. So here we go.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Something Political. In today's video, we'll explore the key critiques of liberal feminism, especially within the context of international relations, and socialist Marxist feminism being one of those critiques. Liberal feminism has made significant strides for women's rights, but it's not without criticism, many of which parallel broader critiques of liberalism itself. First, one of the main criticisms is that liberal feminism claims universality. Just as traditional liberalism speaks of the rights of men, liberal feminism tends to talk about the rights of women as though all women share the same experience.
I know this one's hard to hear, so I'm going to have to interject as it goes along. Liberal feminism talks about the rights of women and that all women get treated fair. So that's your liberal feminism in a nutshell. This is what they have for that one. Okay, so let's continue.
Critics argue this is problematic. This universal claim is often seen as ignoring the specific experiences of women based on race, ethnicity, religion, or socioeconomic background.
So liberal feminism ignores certain problems based off of, race and economic background and things of that nature. So as we see that liberal feminism has its pros and cons like anything else.
Feminists from Black, Third World, and post-colonial perspectives argue that liberal feminism's agenda doesn't always align with the needs of non-white or non-Western women.
So the liberal feminism basically overlooks, I guess you could say it in a sense, minority issues. You know what I mean? So basically anybody from the East or of a different race will not benefit as much from liberal feminism, is what she's saying in a nutshell.
These identity-based feminisms point out that liberal feminism's priorities, such as workplace equality or reproductive rights, often overlook the pressing issues of women in marginalized communities, such as racial discrimination, colonial legacies, or economic oppression. Another major critique is that liberal feminism often claims to know the real world objectively, accepting mainstream interpretations of how the world works. It tends to assume the international system is conflictual, with states competing for power in an anarchical environment. Liberal feminists focus on changing women's roles and opportunities within these structures rather than challenging the nature of the system itself. For example,
So liberal feminism isn't changing the system, it's just changing the women's role within the system itself, but it's not changing the system. And this is example that they're going to give you by putting women in powerful roles that men could do.
liberal feminists might highlight figures like Condoleezza Rice, former US Secretary of State, as role models. Rice's career proves that a woman can hold powerful positions, such as coordinating US involvement in wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. However, critics argue that this does not necessarily advance feminism. Instead, it shows that women can participate in the same structures of power without questioning the system itself, such as the use of war in international relations. This brings us to a second strand of feminist theory, socialist and Marxist feminism. Unlike liberal feminism, socialist Marxist feminists argue that the root of women's inequality lies within the capitalist system. For Marxist feminists,
So the Marxist feminists are the ones that are against capitalism. They're the ones that are against the capitalism, and they don't like the way capitalists dominate things, I guess.
the solution to gender inequality is to overthrow capitalism. Socialist feminists, on the other hand, add that patriarchy, alongside capitalism, plays a critical role in women's oppression.
All right, so they don't like the patriarchy and they want to overthrow capitalism, and the Marxist feminists want to bring in Marxism. The liberal feminists want to not change the system, but be a part of the system, but have women in capitalist patriarchal roles. But the Marxist one wants to change capitalism and implement Marxism.
It's not just the economic system, but also male dominance that needs to be dismantled. For socialist Marxist feminists, the focus is on how the world capitalist system and patriarchy work together to systematically disadvantage women, keeping them behind men in almost every sphere of life. There is also an important intersection between socialist Marxist feminism and post-colonial feminism. Both are critical when analyzing the global economy and how it affects women. However, post-colonial feminists criticize socialist Marxist feminism for assuming that patriarchy operates the same way everywhere and at all times. They argue that this viewpoint falsely universalizes the experience of male domination without considering how it intersects with race, colonialism, and the specific oppression of people of color.
So they just want to basically abolish capitalism. And they want to take away capitalism and put Marxism as the new political way of moving. As far as the liberal feminism, it would still be a capitalist, but it wanted to have the same roles as the men in capitalism. So they're two of the same mindsets in a sense, fighting, over male dominance, but they both don't want domination of a man over them. One wants to do what a man can do and be in his role. The other wants to completely overthrow the patriarchy of a man and take his role or take the role of the man. So they're both trying to just dominate, but in different ways. However, both sides, from the liberal side of feminism and the Marxist side of feminism, they both had one common thing in common. They didn't pay attention to the less fortunate or the minority. They both are paying attention up here. So like basically rich and elite is who they pay attention to. Anybody less fortunate, they're not really caring about. It's an elite agenda. It's not a middle class poor agenda. Let's continue.
Postcolonial feminists stress that both men and women of color face different layers of oppression, and global systems of power often ignore these complexities. So, to sum up, liberal feminism has been critiqued for its universal claims and focus on working within existing power structures without questioning them. Socialist Marxist and post-colonial feminisms offer alternative viewpoints, highlighting the role of capitalism, patriarchy, and the global economy and perpetuating gender inequality. And that brings us to the end of this short video about critiques of liberal feminist theory and socialist Marxist.
All right, so that's going to be it for the end of the video. So basically, we had, just to sum it up, liberal feminism doesn't want to change capitalism. It wants to be in capitalism's powerful positions, but also at the same time, being in those positions, focusing on the elite women within the liberal feminist system, only focusing on the elite people. Anybody that's underneath it, you know, that's not as fortunate, of a minority or a different race, doesn't really, it doesn't really focus on their issues as much. It's only focusing on the top. On the other side, the Marxist feminism or feminist, they have more of they want to overthrow capitalism and put in Marxism and focus mainly on dominating and overthrowing the patriarchy. So you have two different kinds of feminists that you see going in back and forth. So when you hear these things, you'll notice that these two feminists, they're arguing over two different kinds of feminism. Okay? So now we have another lady who's going to go into this, and this video is a lot more clearer. This one's actually going to be better, but I want to put both of these up on here to give you a better, to give you a good understanding. This lady, the video is way better, way more clearer. She's going to help you understand that there is two kind of different feminisms, but they're looking at it from two different perspectives, and you're going to see the two different perspectives on what they see these on what they see feminism in. And you're going to realize that moving forward in the she economy, when moving forward in the she economy and women are doing well, is it equal for all women of all classes, poor, middle, rich, and elite? Or is it only for the dominating classes of the elite women? That's something you need to pay attention to. So let's go ahead and let this woman speak on this. This is going to be Kristen Godsey. She spoke on this and she actually did a really good job. So let's let her take it away. Here we go.
One of the chapters in the book is called Pantsuits Are Not Enough.
Yes.
In that chapter, I really try to unpack why it is that this sort of liberal feminism, lean-in feminism, girl boss feminism, whatever you want to call it, the socialists used to call it bourgeois feminism back in the late 19th century. That sort of strand of feminism was always about getting women things like voting rights through the suffragettes, getting women, married women, property rights, allowing women access to higher education, and allowing women access to previously male professions. And so that version of women's activism was always really about privileged women. It was always really about the daughters of those with property, the wealthy daughters being really angry that when they got married, all of their wealth was immediately transferred to the pockets of their husbands, who could spend it at will, as many of them did. And there were, all of these rules, excluding women from obviously voting, but also excluding women from professions, no matter how talented they were. And I think it's really important to understand that when we look at the history of women's activism in the late 19th century, and we go back to somebody like Flora Tristan, who was writing in like 1838, 1840, her final book is 1843, what you see is that there was this whole other strand of feminism, which was really about understanding that working women, that peasant women, that ordinary women needed to build a coalition with men, with workers from the bottom up, and really kind of transform society together, rather than just imagining that having some elite role models, like having a female president or a female CEO or some, girl boss sort of thing, that that top down kind of trickle down idea of like, well, if we just have a few women in power, they're going to make us all, it's going to be good for all of us. It's not, right? What it means is it's good for them. And it's always been good for them. And it's not good for ordinary women. And so I think that when we go back and we really understand the longer history and trajectory of what is called socialist feminism, clearly it was a much more inclusive and broad-based movement. Now, it has its problems. I'm not trying to sugarcoat it. There are things about it. Some people say that it can be very essentializing. It tends to overemphasize women's roles as mothers and caregivers. But at the end of the day, whether you agree with women's roles, you know, being defined by motherhood or not, a lot of women are mothers and a lot of women are caregivers. And at least this model is not just focused on getting a few women ahead at the top. It's about creating a society which is much more just and equitable and sustainable for everybody, not just for a few elite women at the top. And I think that's really important.
Okay. So as you see there, she made that very clear on how there's two different kinds of ways on how women see feminism. So one group of women who see feminism as I can do what a man can do. You know what I mean? Like, hey, I can do what a man can do. And it's the elite women who had privilege already. They were already privileged at the top. And it's like, well, I'm getting all this wealth passed down to me. Why I got to give it to a man? I can do what he can do. Why can't I vote? Why can't I do this? Why can't I open a... Why is it that everything that I get is... But these are privileged people up here. These type of feminists, they're privileged. And I think she said they call them the bourgeois or bougie or bourgeois or whatever kind of feminist. They had a different mindset because, like she said, they're privileged. So they saw things and they went through life differently. Then you had, I guess, the socialist Marxist type feminist who were like the working class peasant wise feminist who were trying to build something from the ground up, but they were trying to change everything by trying to work together with everybody to come up. So there's two different kinds of thinking. Okay, it's two different kinds of feminists. So if we're moving forward in the she economy, and you have two different kinds of feminists, which one's gonna reign supreme? You know what I mean? Like, which one is gonna reign supreme? Is it gonna be the one at the top? Because then if the one at the top wins, and these women think like, oh, we all won. And then you're gonna have that one at the top or two at the top or whatever that's gonna go and, you know, help everybody down as like a trickle effect. Like she said, that ain't gonna work. They're not gonna look for the best interest in everyone, and we have evidence of that. I'm gonna show you that here in a little bit. But let me let her. We're gonna watch that video one more time, and I'm gonna interject as she talks because she did a really good job in explaining it, and I'll be able to show you examples as we go. So here we go.
One of the chapters in the book is called Pantsuits Are Not Enough.
Yes.
In that chapter, I really try to unpack.
And the title of this is You Have Socialist Feminism versus Corporate Feminism.
Why it is that this sort of liberal feminism, lean-in feminism, girl boss feminism, whatever you want to call it, the socialists used to call it bourgeois feminism back in the late 19th century. That sort of strand of feminism was always about getting women things like voting rights through the suffragettes, getting women, married women, property rights, allowing women access to higher education, and allowing women access to previously male professions. And so that version of women's activism was always really about privileged women. It was always really about the daughters of those with property, the wealthy daughters being really angry that when they got married, all of their wealth was immediately transferred to the pockets of their husbands who could spend it at will, as many of them did. And there were, all of these rules, excluding women from obviously voting, but also excluding women from professions, no matter how talented they were. And I think it's really important to understand that when we look at the history of women's activism in the late 19th century, and we go back to somebody like Flora Tristan, who was writing in like 1838, 1840, her final book is 1843, what you see is that there was this whole other strand of feminism, which was really about understanding that working women, that peasant women, that ordinary women needed to build a coalition with men, with workers from the bottom up and really kind of transform society together.
Okay, so now we see these kind of women as well. So now you have the elite women, like they said, I think she called them earlier, the more privileged ones, the more, I guess, the girl boss type at the top. Then you have the peasant worker women at the bottom, who still understood the fact of working with men in a sense, but they wanted to change the duties in the roles in the structure as they built up society. So those will be your corporate feminists in this case, and then you had your social privileged feminists, who at the top level, they were the privileged ones that was born into wealth and stuff like that, and how they didn't like how their wealth got taken from them and sent to their husbands and spent at will, and they didn't have any rights to vote or anything like that. Now, she said that, well, actually, I don't know if she said it yet. She did mention that these women here potentially might want to give, well, you know what, let me let her say it. I actually let her say it. Where is it at? There she is. Let me let her finish up, and then we'll go to this next woman. Here we go.
Rather than just imagining that having some elite role models, like having a female president or a female CEO or some, girl boss sort of thing, that top down kind of trickle down idea of like, well, if we just have a few women in power, they're going to make us all, it's going to be good for all of us. It's not.
It's not. Having a few women in power, it's not. And that's the same thing as, it's just basically it's basically the same thing as what we have now, how people look up to having a few men in power and think they're going to go and do what we tell them to do as far as voting and politicking and all that stuff. And it's just the same. It's still the upper higher ups, elite privileged ones at the top still making the same decision. You're just transferring the role over to the women. That's it. It's the same thing. It's just like, okay, why the hell is I come into power with money, but I have to give it over to my husband? And I hate to say this, but it seems like, in a sense, a situation that kind of happened like that. I could be wrong. I have to dive deeper into this, but it kind of seems like the Charlie Kirk situation, where now his wife is in charge of everything now. Like, she's now the one running the show. Like, she is like the CEO, head boss, in charge now. You know what I mean? So, which, I mean, she's widowed. I guess you expect her to be, but it's an example of how it looks like. Now, to put this into perspective, there was a woman by the name of, what's her name, sweetie? Her name was, where is it? I gotta find her name. Alexandria Kollontai, if I said it correctly. This lady, she was a Russian revolutionary politician, diplomat, and Marxist and also a Marxist. She serves as a people commissioner for welfare in Vladimir Lenin's government from 1917 to 1918. She was a highly prominent woman in the Bolshevik Party. We're going to find out what that is here in a second. Let me actually pull up on the screen so you can see. She was the first woman in history to be a cabinet minister, and one of the first women to be appointed as a diplomatic representative of a minor state, and the first to be promoted to the ranks of ambassador. All right, so we have her right here. There she is right there. All right, now as you see here, we're going to go down, and we're going to get a good understanding of who she was. Excuse me. In 1919, she was a leading figure in the foundation. Can you see it right here? She was a leading figure of the foundation of the Zoentodel, and then the then new Women's Department of Central Committee that was aimed at improving the status of women in the Soviet Union. She was a champion of women's liberation, and later came to be recognized as a key figure in Marxist feminism. Okay, so she was a key figure of Marxist feminism, right? She was all about it. She was outspoken against the bureaucrats' influence over the Communist Party and is a undemocratic internal practices. To that end, she sided with the left-wing workers' opposition in 1920, but eventually defeated and sidelined and narrowly avoiding her own expulsion from the party altogether. So let's go ahead and go down a little bit further. All right, so what we have her here is, let me see, what do we have? Where is it at right here? A political retreat. Okay, so right here, if you look at this part right here, all right, she was, a prominent figure inside of the whole thing. And she has her contributions to Marxist feminism. Well, let's see what her contributions were. She was regarded as a key figure of Marxist feminism for her commitment to both women's liberation and Marxist ideas. Okay? So she was about it. She opposed the ideology of liberal feminism. So she was not about that capitalist feminism, if I'm not mistaken. Let's double check to make sure. It's a main branch. Liberal feminism is a main branch defined by its focus on achieving gender equality. She was not about achieving gender equality through political and legal reform within the framework of liberal democracy and informed by human rights perspectives. It is also often considered culturally progressive. So she was not about that. She saw that as whatever this word is, burgessi. She wasn't about that burgessi life. She wasn't about that. She was not about the girl boss thing. She was a champion of women's liberation, believing that it could take place only as a result of the victory of a new social order and a different economic system. She criticized the burgessi feminists for prioritizing political goals such as women's suffrage that would provide political equality for burgessi women, but would do little to address the immediate conditions of working class women, and was further distrustful that the burgessi women, champions of feminism, would continue to support their working class counterparts after succeeding in their struggle for general women's rights. So right here, get an understanding, the burgessi, and I know I'm saying this word wrong, are a class of business owners, merchants, and wealthy people in general, which emerged in the late Middle Ages, originally as a middle class between the peasant and the aristocracy. They are traditionally contrasted with the it's late. But they are traditionally contrasted with the proliterate, by their wealth, political power, and education. So basically, the wealthy ones, the higher up ones, the girl bosses, the bad and bougie ones, the female empowered ones, basically the ones who can do what a man can do. She wasn't about that life. She didn't want nothing to do with it. She was like, I'm not really feeling them too much, because she's like, they're just gonna basically do what they do up here. She was trying to change things from the working class women on up. She had a different view on it. And she knew that she knew that they would provide political equity for burgesque women, but do little to address the immediate conditions of working class women, and was further distrustful that the bougie champions of feminism would continue to support their working class counterparts after succeeding in their struggle for general women's rights. So when you have this, I can do what a man can do, the liberal side of feminism, she was like, this isn't going to work. This is how she saw it. She said that this isn't going to work. And I'm trying to just point out to you that there's two different kind of feminisms. They're not two of the same thing. You had you had a bougie feminism class, and you had a working feminism class. You got the liberal feminism class, which is about doing what a man can do about politics. But then you had the Marxist feminism class. Either or, the way they both worked out was this. The working class type of feminist, well, I guess it doesn't explain it right there. Right here, she wrote something. I don't know if I'll go ahead and read it. Class instinct, whatever the feminists say, always show itself to be more powerful than the noble enthusiasts of above class politics. So as long as the bougie women and their younger sisters are equal in their inequality, the former can, with complete sincerity, make great efforts to defend the general interests of women. But once the barrier is down and the bougie women have received access to political activity, the recent defenders of the rights of all women become enthusiastic defenders of the privileges of their class, content to leave the younger sisters with no rights at all. Thus, when the feminists talk to working women about the need for a common struggle to realize some general women's principles, women of the working class are naturally distrustful. So basically, they're basically talking about the wealthy class feminists and the working class or poor class feminists, and they're saying that they'll say what they need to say up here to get to get to what they want to get to up here. These feminists will. But when they get up here, then what they'll basically do to these feminists down here is they'll basically look back at them and they'll say something along these lines.
FYM. Fuck y'all motherfuckers, you know?
Okay? Basically is what she's saying. That's what they'll end up doing. So right here we have, what's her name? Kollontai. I am not saying that right. She is known for her advocacy of free love. However, this does not mean she advocates for casual sexual encounters. Indeed, she believed that due to the inequality between men and women that persisted under socialism, such encounters would lead to women being exploited and being left to raise children alone. Instead, she believed that true socialism could not be achieved without a radical change in attitudes to sexuality. So this might be free from the oppressive norms that she saw a continuation of the bougie ideas about property. A common myth describes her as a proponent of the glass of water theory of sexuality. What is the glass of water theory? The glass of water theory is a doctrine asserting that in a communist society, satisfying sexual desires and love will be as simple and unimportant as drinking a glass of water. I don't understand that, but okay. The quote, the satisfaction of one's sexual desires should be as simple as getting a glass of water, and is often mistakenly attributed to her. Okay. This is likely a distortion of the moment in her short story, when a young female member argues that smegs is as meaningless as drinking a glass of water or vodka. Okay. Though she believed in the eventual obsolescence of the traditional family, she held that the institution of marriage could survive if it underwent a radical transformation. She advocated for a transformed marriage that would be compatible with many other social relations, such as friendship. She felt that by liberating women and men from their traditional hierarchy roles, communism would free marriage from the conjugal slavery of the past, allowing spouses to thrive in a egalitarian marriages grounded in mutual love and trust. Okay, so she's the one who, she's trying to change marriage and the gender roles within the marriage. You know, she wants to play, she's basically trying to fight for the working class feminist. And she's like, hey, you know, both of us can work. We can share duties, chore play. You know what I mean? Like, she's basically completely saying that there's no roles when it comes to the house. You know, I'm equal to him and he's equal to me in this house. And we can do these roles together and build up. So there is no hierarchy in the marriage. So she's about marriage, and she's saying there's no hierarchy in the family role. One's not higher than the other. We're both equal in marriage. But then you have the other feminists, the liberal feminists, the privileged, the bougie ones, who are up here, and, you know, they're born into power, wealth, and money. They have a different They have a different outlook on life and a different outlook on feminism. They like, we can do what a man can do. We can get into politics. We can handle money. We can drive cars. We can vote. We can get our own, that's how they're looking up here. So it's two different kind of feminisms that is going on, that's happening right now. And what she's saying is that if these bougie women up here get a hold of what they're trying to get a hold of and become politically powerful, girl boss, all this stuff, they're not going to give a damn about us down here. They're not going to trickle it down to us. She's like, they're not going to trickle it down to us. She can already basically see it. She's like, that ain't going to happen. And plus, the way they think up here ain't the same way that we think down here. We're trying to build from the ground up. They're already up. They come from money. They're not going to take the wealth and go down. So she already understood that, but that's what I want to point out to you, that there's two different kind of feminist ways of thinking. And moving forward, and what we have going on with the she economy, with women, with women dominating the economy and spending and making money, these are two mindsets that are going on. And are they aware of these two different mindsets that are going on? Some women may understand it and some women may not. It's just good to be aware of how both of these mindsets are working. Now, let's take us back to the very top of what we saw earlier, and let's get a good understanding of this right here. She is a highly prominent woman within the Bolshevik Party. What is the Bolshevik Party? Glad you asked. We are going to watch a video that's going to describe the Bolshevik Party and the things that they did during their reign, so we can get a good understanding of who and what the Bolshevik Party is all about. So with that being said, whoopsies, I got this video that we're going to take a look at, and we're going to sit here and get a good understanding of the Bolsheviks and the things they did during their reign. So let's go ahead and get this video started.
Few words in 20th century history have been as complicated as Bolshevik. The Bolsheviks were a splinter group of the Russian Social Democratic Labour Party and became a formal party in 1912. They were avowed Marxists and revolutionaries who spearheaded the Russian Revolution in 1917, toppling the Tsar and giving rise to the Soviet Union. They would later rename themselves as the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, although the Bolshevik nickname still stuck. For decades, the Bolsheviks ruled one of the most powerful countries on earth, endured a world war, and became locked in a decades-long ideological standoff with the capitalist world. The Bolsheviks fell in 1991, and the USSR along with them, but in the years since, the legacy of their rule has been increasingly scrutinized. How much did the rosy propaganda of the USSR align with reality? What truths were revealed when the archives were opened? What diabolical things did the Bolsheviks do during the reign? Today, we explore the dark deeds of the ruling party of the Soviet Union.
I've recently come to learn that...
So now, as we're going to watch the ruling parties of the Soviet Union, or the Bolsheviks, one thing I want you to pay attention to, she was a part of the Bolshevik party. When you look at the Bolshevik party, let's see if we can figure out, is there an elite side to the Bolshevik party, and is there a working side to the Bolshevik party? That's what we're going to pay attention to. At least that's what I'm going to pay attention to. So we're going to try to figure that part out. With the Bolshevik party going forward, is there an elite side? And is there a working class side? And we're going to try to pick that out to see what side of feminism would be favored, and how one of those sides of feminism, how each of those sides of feminism would get treated. If it's this feminism up here in the Bolsheviks party, how would it look raining down? And if it's the working class part of feminism, how would it fare working up? So let's pay attention to that. So here we go. Let's continue this video.
From the outset, the Bolsheviks were possessed by ideology. They preached a form of revolutionary Marxism that scorned private property and land ownership. They detested capitalism, monarchism, nationalism, and religion as tools of powerful groups to control the masses, and instead believed that all of these things should be overthrown and replaced with a system of collective ownership for the benefit of the workers.
Collective ownership for the benefit of the workers. So to me, that sounds like the working class feminism, the one that Kolotai lady, that one that we're looking at, that looks like what she was about. So that's what that seems like. Collective for the working class. That's what seems like she was proponent for, in changing the gender roles and having no hierarchy within marriage. So let's continue.
The ideal Bolshevik future was one where everyone was equal in wealth and legal status, living in a world free from poverty, war, and oppression.
Okay. Equal in wealth and legal status, no hierarchy.
It was an inspiring vision that had long appealed to many, and continues to inspire people today. Advanced by articulate and intelligent thinkers, most notably Vladimir Lenin, Soviet-style Marxism gained traction in the early years of the 20th century. However noble its goals may have been, even in these early years, the Bolsheviks showed that they were perfectly willing to sacrifice human lives on the altar of their ideology. For example, one of the ways that the Bolsheviks raised money in the 1900s was through robbery. This robbery often harmed the very people the Bolsheviks claimed to be protecting. In June 1907, in the Georgian city of Tiflis, a group of Bolsheviks ambushed a shipment of cash in the town's Erevansky Square with firearms and explosives. In the ensuing violence, around 40 people were killed, many of them civilians. The robbery caused mass outrage against the Bolsheviks, and many of the Bolsheviks' leaders involved in the robbery, most notably Lenin and Stalin, later attempted to cover up their associations with the event. In the grand scheme of history, 40 deaths would be a mere drop in the ocean of what the Bolsheviks would go on to do, but it was a chilling forewarning of what was to come. By 1917, the memory of the robbery had faded. The Bolsheviks had become a potent force for Marxist revolution amidst a Russia locked in the grueling First World War.
And one thing I wanted to point out was that what was I gonna say? I lost my train of thought. Was a good way to a good way to look at the two different kind of feminists is your bougie feminist would be your BLM, your Black Lives Matter feminist, and then your working class feminist would be your liberal feminists, like the ones who voted for Kamala Harris. That would be a good distinction of the other two, because Black Lives Matter, when they were doing their thing, they took their money and they didn't give a damn about anybody underneath them. They just went out and bought real estate with their money. You know what I mean? And then you had the other working class feminists down here who was like, Kamala's going to get into power. She's going to get there. And, we're going to, we don't have a hierarchy in marriage and relationships. Hell, they ain't really even want a marriage or a relationship. But they was more of like the working class, want everything to be equal on the playing field. But the Black Lives Matter women didn't want everything to be equal on the playing field. They preached like they did, but they wanted power. Like, those are your two different kinds, so you can get an idea of it. But let's continue. Here we go.
It was the Bolsheviks that lit the revolutionary spark that burned down the Tsarist regime in 1917, and eventually inaugurated the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic, RSFSR. It was the first socialist state in history, and it would be christened in blood. In July 1918, the deposed Tsar Nicholas II, along with his family, including his 13-year-old son, were executed by Bolshevik forces in an act that remains deeply controversial to this day.
All right, so as we see, whenever you have to turn over a leaf, it always comes with violence. The threat of violence is there, and as you see, who's doing the violence? The men are. Even though the feminist ideology is that they can do what men can do, when force needs to be implied, look who's implying a force. But let's continue. Here we go.
The Russian Civil War erupted as countless factions sought to oppose the new regime. For all of its claims of protecting the Russian people, the Bolsheviks plunged the country into one of the deadliest conflicts of the 20th century. By the end of the fighting in 1923, at least 7 million Russians had been killed, with some estimates putting the number closer to 12 million. While fighting the war, the Bolsheviks also had to tighten their grip on the areas they already controlled. Ideological enemies had to be rooted out, and so, in the opening years of Bolshevik rule, tens of thousands of people were killed in a campaign of repression and extermination known as the Red Terror. The Cheka, the newly founded Bolshevik secret police and forerunner of the more famous KGB, played a leading role in hunting down all those designated as enemies of the state. Pre-revolution officials, Tsarists, anti-communists, landowners, business owners, priests, and almost anyone who might have a reason to oppose the new regime found themselves in its sights.
All right, so far, when we look at this,
Tsarists, anti-communists, landowners, business owners, priests.
When we look at this, what kind of communism does this look like? Does this look like, where is it right here? Does this look like, where is it? Does this look like the bougie feminists, the bougie communism? You know, the Marxist communism where, you know, they're going for political power, wealth, or does this look like working class feminism? Because she was a part of the Marxist feminism she was a part of her Marxist feminism, her commitment to both women's liberation and Marxist ideas. So you have the Marxist feminism. It analyzes the ways in which women are exploited through capitalism and the individual ownership of private property. So according to Marxist feminist women's liberation, she was focused on the working class. This is what she was focused on, the working class. And she wanted to change from the ground up. But when we're looking at how these people are moving, the kind of Marxism or feminism that they're putting on, they're more of a bougie class. Because right now they over here, you know, committing robberies. And it says right here, anybody that's anti-communist, landowners, business owners, priests can get it. So it's like power at the top. And because they got the wealth and the police force and all that on their side, they can dominate going down. As opposed to working together as a community, as the worker feminism, I guess is what you can call it in this sense. The worker feminism, what that lady was trying to do, Kalatov, she was trying to basically work with everybody, but change the tradition of marriage, but have everybody equal on an equal playing field. This ain't equal. This version of feminism, communism, this style of feminism, communism is not equal. It's equal for the higher ups. This version of feminism, feminism, communism, it's equal for the higher ups. But the feminism that she was talking about for the working class was that everybody had equal pay, equal work, equal everything for the working class going up. So remember, there's two different kind of communisms or feminism, communism or whatever. There's two different kinds that they're dealing with. You got the rich kind, you got the working class kind. Which one are we looking at? Let's continue.
And almost anyone who might have a reason to oppose the new regime found themselves in its sights. For the revolution to be successful, all counter-revolutionary elements had to be eliminated. Historians estimate that around 100,000 people were murdered by the Bolsheviks in the first 5 years of the regime. Far from
100,000 people were murdered in the first 5 years. That is, I already did the math on that. 20,000 people every year. Divide that by 12. It's like 1,600 a month. Divide that by 5. That's 55 people a day.
From shame, the Bolsheviks' leaders felt pride. Grigory Zioniev, one of the leading Bolsheviks at the time, captured the attitude of the regime towards any that stood in its way. We must carry along with us 90 million out of the 100 million of Soviet Russia's population. As for the rest, we have nothing to say to them. They must be annihilated. The Bolsheviks had a goal, and no amount of human suffering was too much in the pursuit of utopia. By 1922, the Bolsheviks had eliminated all effective opposition and stood unrivaled as the masters of Russia. In December 1922, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics (USSR) was formed. Under various names, the Bolsheviks would remain at its head until its collapse almost.
One of the great challenges in this world.
All right, let's get this out of here. So far, as we can see, we have the elite class of communism, of feminism, communism, and then we have the working class of feminism, communism. And it doesn't seem like they can coexist too well together. They're not working well together, which is what that lady pointed out. But let's go ahead and continue and see how this pans out. So here we go.
70 years later. Having established their power, the Bolsheviks now set out to build their communist ideal. One of the most important steps towards this was the collectivization of agricultural land. This meant taking farmland out of private hands and placing it under the control of the people as represented by the state. The goal was to avoid the profit-seeking of private landowners and the unequal distribution of food in a private system. Instead, the government would take control of agriculture. It was argued that the collectivization would ensure that agriculture worked for the benefit of everyone and would allow the state to distribute food equally among its people. Collectivization remains a touchy political issue, and the jury is out on whether it could ever work. It is still a goal proposed around the world today. However, the massive death tolls from the Bolsheviks' attempts to implement it, along with similarly disastrous consequences in places like China and Cambodia, cast a grim shadow over the debate. Lofty goals were one thing, but real-world results were another. Many peasants refused to give up their land, and in response, the Bolsheviks employed force. Any who resisted collectivization were named as enemies of the Soviet Union, of communism, and of society as a whole. Rural social structures were torn apart as the Bolsheviks tried to remake Russia to fit its new vision. Peasants who resisted found themselves threatened, abused, imprisoned, or killed. Institutions such as the Orthodox Church became focal points for peasant resistance. Thousands of Orthodox clergy were imprisoned or executed, and by 1940, over 90% of Russia's Orthodox priests had been eliminated. In 1937 alone, over 85,000 priests were executed. One of the main victims of the collectivization process were the kulaks. Kulak was a term referring to a land-owning peasant, but in reality, it referred to anyone deemed to have more than the Bolshevik authorities thought they deserved. Farmers who could afford to hire farmhands, who owned more than a small plot of land, or who owned too many animals might be labeled as kulaks. The Bolsheviks designated these people as class traitors and enemies of the revolution. In the zero-sum worldview of the Bolsheviks, the supposed wealth of the kulaks could only have been stolen from the people. Many of these kulaks were actually quite poor, and few even approached the level of the middle class, but nevertheless the Bolsheviks marked them out for destruction. Their property was seized and millions were imprisoned or forced off of their land. Hundreds of thousands were simply murdered. Not only did the kulaks themselves suffer, but the death of so many productive agricultural workers produced a predictable outcome: famine. The Soviet famines of the 1930s.
All right, so far, I want to point out something that seems blatantly obvious. So far what we have right here is, where are we at, 9:13? All right, so what we have right here is, as we're sitting here listening to them describe this stuff down to a T. Where do we go? Right, where is it at? Right here, where they describe this right here, and the complete savagery that they're basically explaining. They're saying that this level of these type of communists, because like I said, there's two different types of communists. There's a communist where they're focused on political power and the government owns everything and they dominate everything via the government, which is what we're seeing. And then you have, I guess, this other form of communism, what she was talking about right here, where you had a working class, where it focused on the conditions of the working class, and it focused on, you know, things of family, marriage, but no hierarchy within the marriage. There's no traditional roles within the marriage. Both would work together. However, everybody and everything is equal across the board. Everybody and everything is equal across the board. Everybody shares everything. But the question is, if you share everything, who owns it? You know what I mean? Like, who owns it at all? And we'll go back right here to what they were speaking of earlier, because they actually said it right here earlier, how the ideology worked. So let's see right here.
Groups to control the masses, and instead believe that all of these things should be overthrown and replaced with a system of collective ownership for the benefit of the workers.
That right there. Collective ownership for the benefit of the workers. So if the workers, so at the end of the day, it's a collective ownership, but it's still owned by communism. It's not owned by the workers, it's owned for the workers. Let's hear them out.
For groupalism, monarchy, private property, and land ownership. A form of revolutionary Marxism that scorned private property and land ownership. They detested capitalism, monarchism, nationalism, and religion as tools of powerful groups to control the masses, and instead believed that all of these things should be overthrown and replaced with a system of collective ownership for the benefit of the workers. The ideal Bolshevik future was one where everyone was equal in wealth and legal status, living in a world free from poverty, war, and oppression. It was an inspiring vision.
Okay, everybody's equal in...
was one where everyone was equal in wealth and legal status.
So you're equal in wealth and legal status. However, everything that you own is owned by the government, but the worker is the beneficiary. So at this level, at the worker level of communism, the government still owns everything, but the beneficiary is the worker. You don't own shit. The government owns everything. At this level of communism, you have this right here. This is what you have. This level of communism, the government owns everything, except now, if you anti-communist, if you're anti-communist, we don't want no landowners, we don't want no business owners, and we don't want no priest. If you got any, and if you were, whatever this is, if you this too, you are an enemy. You're a problem. So both of these styles of communism, whether it's the bougie kind, I don't know how what is it? The Borghese or whatever. The bougie kind is what I call it. The Borghese, the bougie kind, or the working class kind. Either way it adds up. Both of these kinds, the government owns everything. The only difference is down here, the beneficiary is the worker. Up here, the power is with the elites and they dominate and reign supreme on down, which is what we're seeing. Now, when they explain this, because this is what we're seeing. We're seeing robberies, murders, and all sorts of stuff. When they explain this, you can't own no land, you can't own no business, you can't even have a priest, you can't have no religion, none of that. You can't say nothing bad about communism. What does this sound like? What does this sound like? Let me show you. If you look at this right here, we're going to go to the Bible. The beast out of the earth. The second beast was given power to give breath to the image of the first beast, so that the image could speak and cause all who refused to worship the image to be killed. It also forced all people, great and small, rich and poor, free and slave, so that they could not buy or sell unless they had a mark on their hand, which is the name of the beast or the number of his name. Now, the way that they're applying force literally sounds like this right here. This force that they're putting on people, where is it at? Right here. The force that they're putting on people right here literally sounds like this. I saw a second beast coming out of earth that had 2 horns, and it performed great signs, even causing fire to come down because of the signs it was given power to perform on behalf of the first beast. It deceived the inhabitants of the earth. Yeah, and it ordered them to set up an image in honor of the beast. So basically, you're going to worship this beast, which is what? You better not be against us. You better be with us. It forced all people, great, small, rich, poor, free, and slave, so that they could not buy or sell. So therefore, right here, you ain't buying no land, you ain't selling nothing out your business, and you ain't finna be praying or praising nobody. Okay? Like, they're literally implementing a satanic type of reign upon people. It's practically mimicking what this is saying right here. It's mimicking this. The way they're out here destroying things. Because look, you don't own anything. The government owns everything. Even if it's the bougie feminism, communism, or the working class feminism, communism, the ownership of everything, or control, whatever you want to call it, is still to the government, regardless of which way you go. In my understanding, at least in capitalism, you have a chance to have your own private property. You don't get that in a communist regime, regardless of which way you slice it. But let's continue this video.
Direct result of Bolshevik policy. Soviet famines of the 1930s were a direct result of Bolshevik policy and led to the death of millions of people. Nowhere were the effects of collectivization and man-made famine seen more terribly than Ukraine. Ukraine had a high population of kulaks. Although part of the USSR, Ukraine also had a strong independence movement that resisted Soviet control. Over 4,000 instances of Ukrainian resistance to Soviet collectivization were recorded in the years leading up to the famine. And in the 1930s, Stalin saw a chance to remove nationalists and kulaks at once. A suite of policies were introduced to break Ukrainian resistance and seize the property of citizens. Ukrainian political, cultural, and religious leaders were imprisoned or executed. Those designated as kulaks were forcibly removed from their land, and the state engaged in massive seizure of green resources. The actions were justified with appeals to the Bolsheviks' political program. Leo Kopelev, then a radio news broadcaster but later a renowned anti-Soviet author and activist, reflected on how those complicit in the events saw things. I was among those who believed that you had to shake up the village to get it to give up the grain, that the villagers, kulaks, had no consciousness of awareness. that they care only about their property, that they don't care for the workers, that they are not interested in the construction of socialism. One resident of Mariupol, cited in Anne Applebaum's book Red Famine 2017, similarly recalled how ideology was used to justify abuse. They recounted the story of a shopkeeper who became enraged at a starving Ukrainian teenage girl and kicked her to death in the street. An avowed supporter of the regime, the shopkeeper supposedly told weeping and horrified onlookers that the girl and those like her were enemies of the people, who deserved no sympathy.
Doesn't that sound like this? It forced all people, great and small, rich, poor, free and slave, so that they could not buy or sell. Doesn't this sound like it? Doesn't it? Look, it deceived the inhabitants of the earth. And we'll just say, when it says earth, just say like a whatever part of the land that they're dealing with. And let's see what the first beast was about real quick, because it keeps saying the first beast. Where's the first beast? The first beast should be right here. Let's see. The dragon stood, and I saw a beast come out the sea. It had 10 horns, but had feet like one of the heads of the beast. The whole world was filled with wonder. It followed, the people worshipped it. Who was like the beast? The beast was given a mouth to utter. It opened its mouth to blaspheme and to slander his name. And it was given power to wage war on against God's holy people and to conquer them. It was given authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation. All inhabitants of the earth will worship the beast, all whose name have not been written. Okay. So it was given the power to wage war against God's holy people and conquer them. So the people gave this beast the power. The people gave the beast the power. It was given authority over every tribe, people, and language and nation. So these people are giving this beast the power to reign upon it via communism, because these people put all of their trust and resources and belief into government instead of themselves. It's the same concept. The concept is the same. Don't get it twisted. Capitalism got pros and cons, but with this communism right here, this feminism of communism, whether it's the bougie kind or the working class kind, the power is all giving. The resources, everything is given to the government. There is no private property. You ain't even got private rights. You can't talk about, you can't be anti-communist. You can't have a business. You can't have land. You can't have a priest, your own religion. This right here is what this is referring to. But let's continue.
Dressing up their actions with ideological ideals, the Bolsheviks justified their actions for a supposed greater good, that even if it succeeded, millions would not live to see. Predictably, the decimation of the most productive agricultural land in the USSR and the extermination of its most productive farmers produced a famine. Far from trying to relieve it, Stalin and the Bolshevik authorities intentionally exacerbated the problem. Ukrainians who dared to steal state-controlled grain were inflicted with harsh punishments, and strict internal travel controls were implemented that prevented refugees fleeing the worst-hit areas, trapping them in the worst-affected regions of the country. The man-made famine in Ukraine in 1932 and 1933 is now known as the Holodomor. Estimates for the death toll range from 3.5 to 7 million people killed in just 2 years. Not only was the famine a direct outcome of Bolshevik actions, the government intentionally acted to worsen the famine in order to eliminate Ukrainians. Although the label is debated, the Holodomor has been named a genocide by both the European Parliament and the Ukrainian government. The scars of the Holodomor continue to shape Ukraine to this day, and linger in national memory as a symbol of Russia's historic abuses towards the nation, a precedent that recent history has chillingly followed.
There's a lot of work that goes into making.
So what it looks like here is that the people gave them power to reign up. Well, I mean, they probably took it. But if you welcome in communism, is what it looks like, you're welcoming in, man, a very satanic way of living. And they're going to reign power over you because you're supposed to be the beneficiary of whatever they do. And you have no say-so to get out and have your own business. You can't speak for yourself. You can't have your own religions and principles about yourself. And they got all their resources. They causing famines. They starving these people. Everything. I mean, they're doing them just however they want to do. And it says right here. So the whole thing about it is that giving them the authority over you, you're giving them your resources. This land wasn't created by the government didn't create the land. The land is for the people. The government should not infringe on the people. But unless the people allow it to, then we've seen this story happen over and over and over, as old as time, over and over and over again, where the people say that they want to be ruled by man and step out of the context of God. This is what happens. At least in capitalism, you can have private property. And this is the complete polar opposite of that. But let's continue. Here we go. Where is it at? There it is.
Not every has chillingly followed. Not every victim of the Bolshevik regime was immediately killed. One of the most infamous tools employed by Stalin was the Gulag system. The Gulags were a massive collection of prisons and forced labor camps that millions of Soviet citizens were subjected to between the 1930s and 1950s. The Gulags received traditional criminals like murderers and rapists, but it also received political prisoners. Anyone who was even suspected of opposing the regime, no matter how thin the evidence, could find themselves carted off to the Gulags. The Gulag system created a climate of fear and suspicion in Soviet society. Hundreds of thousands of Soviet citizens became informants for the secret police, some hoping to ingratiate themselves with the authorities by ratting out friends and neighbors, but others possessed by a genuine ideological zeal to find supposed enemies of the people. Since almost any offense could earn a sentence, and any person could be an informant, Soviet citizens became trapped in a constant web of fear and performative loyalty. The Gulag system was never a secret, but its true horrors were exposed most famously by Alexander Solzhenitsyn in his historic book The Gulag Archipelago, 1973. In the book, Solzhenitsyn describes the origins of the system and recounts his experiences during his 8 years of imprisonment within it. Solzhenitsyn was arrested in 1945 for writing derogatory comments about Stalin in a private letter to a friend. Even such a minor transgression was enough to earn Solzhenitsyn almost a decade of suffering inside the camps. Solzhenitsyn gives insight into the grueling lives of those who crossed the Soviet regime. Almost all of the gulags were forced labor systems where prisoners worked long days on difficult work. Most of the camps were far from civilization, often in the frigid wastelands of Siberia, which meant that working conditions were often deadly. The conditions were akin to slavery, and all sorts of abuse was inherent in the system. For example, Solzhenitsyn describes the systematic abuse of female prisoners, who were ordered to line up, strip naked, and be paraded in front of Gulag officials, so they could select which prisoners to keep as sex slaves. Of all of the sufferings that Gulag prisoners endured, one of the most consistent problems remembered by inmates was hunger. The food ration for Gulag prisoners was barely enough to keep them as functional workers, and the withholding of food was a common punishment. The quality of the food was extremely poor, with bread often being made with sawdust. Still, the food the prisoners did get was precious to them. Solzhenitsyn reflected on how desperation turned the miserable gulag rations into a blessing. You had to eat with all your thoughts on the food, like he was nibbling off these little bits now, and turn them over on your tongue, and roll them over in your mouth, and then it tasted so good, this soggy black bread. Starvation and malnutrition.
Our Muslim brothers and
This is brutal, man. Now, what's crazy about this is that how they say that the least slightest bit of evidence can the least slightest bit of evidence could get you thrown in the gulag, and it didn't matter what it was. And plus, people were snitching on you. I had did a video that was referring to a surveillance state where they basically said that the surveillance videos or the cameras or whatever, since everybody's facial recognition would be, added to the system, it would catch you for a crime, but it wouldn't even be 100% accurate, and you would still have to serve time for whatever crime you did and have to fight your way out. It's like the same concept, but on a digital realm. This was a physical realm, but the direction we're potentially headed to now is a digital version of this. Just a modern digital version of this, which is crazy work, but let's continue. Here we go.
Claimed many lives among the prisoners. Disease claimed others in the unsanitary conditions of the camp, or exposure took them in the frigid Siberian wastes. Others died from work injuries, and executions were regularly employed for troublesome prisoners. The death toll from the gulags has been a subject of debate. Although the gulags were not extermination camps like those of the Nazis, at least 1 million people still died during or shortly after their internment, with some estimates putting the number as high as 3 million. A consensus is starting to emerge of about 1.5 million deaths, but this is by no means a final number. For millions more, the physical and mental scars of the camps would remain for life. The Gulag system proved too cruel for Stalin's successors. Later Soviet rulers denounced the system and began dismantling it, but some critics point out that many of the methods, practices, and even locations of the gulags remained in use for years, even decades after their formal abolition. No video could ever hope to cover every diabolical thing done by the Bolsheviks. Chances are that many of you can think of events that we haven't covered. The Katyn massacre, massacres of civilians during the invasion of Finland, and forced deportation to Siberia, to name just a few, which only goes to show the scale of the atrocities committed during their reign. Similarly, no definitive death toll for the actions of the Bolsheviks can truly be known, but historians estimate that the number of people killed as a direct or indirect result of the Soviet regime is in the tens of millions. These atrocities were enabled by ideological possession that placed the goals of the regime above the lives of actual human beings. Similarly to Nazi Germany or Fascist Italy, a government enchanted by its own vision of what the future should look like turned the present into an unimaginable hell for countless victims. The atrocities of the Bolsheviks exposed millions to some of the worst cruelty mankind could offer. Solzhenitsyn, like so many others, spent years attempting to understand why. How could anyone partake in such a brutal system? Solzhenitsyn, like many people and world religions, came to believe that the sort of evil unleashed by the Bolsheviks was not some unique product of Bolshevism, of communism, or of Russians, but indicative of an evil within all of us. The line between good and evil passes not through states, nor between classes, nor between political parties, but right through every human heart and through all human hearts.
I think the evil that he's referring to, he just couldn't understand the evil. It's the evil right here. I'm like 100% sure on this, because this Bible goes over the fact that what happens when you step out of keeping your faith in God, aka yourself, you know, trusting in the faith of you and God, and then allowing yourself to be ruled by man. Because that's what the Bible went over every single time. Every time a community chose not to have their faith in God, but put their faith in man, believing that a government, a king, a pharaoh system were doing well, it turned out bad every time. You know, so when they allowed communism in, that's what it was. And that's what we that's what they end up seeing. So it's a story as old as time. But again, like I said, capitalism has its pros and cons too. But at least you get to own private property and your own business, and you can speak on what you want to speak on, and not have to deal with this kind of, you know, suffering and murderous rage that they were dealing with. But let's finish up because, let's finish up this video because it's almost finished. So here we go.
Ideology, be it communism, fascism, or any other system, fueled the evil that lies within every human heart. Possessed by their ideology, the Bolsheviks inflicted uncountable evils on their fellow man. Even now, decades after they fell, the legacy of their diabolical actions remains. Today's video is quite grim, but it reminds us why we all need to learn from history. History is the collective experience of billions of human beings that came before us. By studying it, we can hope to retain some of the lessons and avoid some of the mistakes that our predecessors made.
All right, so that's gonna basically be it for that video, but shout out to them for making that video. Give them a round of applause for that one. But looking at that video, getting a good understanding exactly of what was going on with that. And let me see. What am I looking for? But getting an understanding of that, just showing you exactly how it works. And I wanted to show that for a simple reason, because, like I said, the Shia economy is a driving force right now, and that's the new prevailing economy that's pushing things forward. And money, currency, whatever you want to call it, currency, because, you know, current is the economic driving force. And whoever is driving the money, whoever is paying, is who's going to make the decision. So understanding things, it seems like, I don't know when, but the prevailing mind at some point may go down the capitalist lane. The last election we had, we could say that it was a landslide to one direction, but we don't know at any point if it turns or if the books get cooked and somebody could cheat to win, that things could go the other way. Now, there's a lot of things that do play into effect, because you're not called a communist, a communist party doesn't mean that you don't run things in the fashion of a communist party. You know what I mean? Because what we were dealing with recently or previously was a whole lot of, how do you say it? It's just a whole lot of nonsense. You know what I mean? Children, you know, being 2-3 years old, not knowing what gender they are. Having to call people he, her, she, they, it, them, and stuff like that. And then people wanting to basically, without fully researching, but giving power 100% to a government system and trying to make everything and everybody equal, but not understanding what it really meant. Or maybe they did. Maybe people did understand what it really meant. But we had a bunch of things that was going on that we were dealing with. And as the time went on, the currency got deflated like crazy. And yet we're still dealing with the consequences and repercussions of that now, and we're still in it, and it's getting worse. Now, I want you to see this thing right here. And I want you to see how under communism, how things may seem good on the surface, but how it seems to have the same underlying effect. So, for example, let me pull this up for you right here. Where is this at? Right here, here's our article. And this is from, what book is this? This book right here is called the Oxford Handbook of the History of Communism, chapter 28. And it says that this article discusses women and gender relations under communism. Beginning in the Soviet Union in the 1920s, which we just saw, continuing through the Cold War era in Eastern Europe, and including Cuba and China today. It addresses communist gender theory, ideology, and discourse. Women's role in politics and government is discussed. The article covers employment and education, the peasant and urban family, social policies, and socialist consumption. Under communism, the article argues women, especially married mothers, broke through traditional resistance to women's participation in paid, including skilled labor. Their levels of education and employment increased dramatically in most communist states, yet women did not attain economic equality with men in any communist society, and their share of political power remained stunningly low. So, with this being said, and when we looked at the two different tiers of feminism or communism, we had the working class and the bougie class, or the bourgeois class, whatever you want to call it. When the bougie class get on top, the political power of the women still remain low, because the women at the top probably didn't look out for the working class women, because it's a class system. And then the working women down here, when feminist communism was a part of the working class, well, hell, they never made it to the top level to have any influence. Yeah, they may have made a lot of good, moves as far as having jobs and working like crazy, but it still didn't benefit them in the long run like they thought it did. So so it doesn't matter which way you go with communism, it ain't gonna benefit the way people think it's gonna benefit by being equal across the board. Yeah, it may look good at the beginning. It may start to look good. It may start out that way, but there's a lot of things that come into play. Because the way that we live today, now over here in the States, women are able to have OnlyFans. Women are able to, work and all the voting, the right to, and all that. They're not turning back from that. And they shouldn't. You got this far, you got it, you could do it. What I'm saying is, try not to regress all the progress that you made by slipping up and going communist. Because it seems like all the progressions that you made in progressing forward in the she economy seems like it's progressing forward because of capitalism, not because of communism. Now we're going to look at this next video right here, and this guy, I'm going to play a short clip from this dude. And as we've seen today in the world that we live in, a high level of escorting and prostitution that you can't ignore, that you see on the internet, that it's just going rampant, that you can't ignore it. You can see this stuff going on, and women are able to revert back to the oldest profession. But in communism, they're able to do it. I mean, excuse me, in capitalism, they're able to do it openly. In communism, we saw that they weren't able to do it. They weren't able to do that overtly out in the open. They were doing it, but they were doing it for, you know, said troops and soldiers or whoever was in the gulag, and they could take their pick of who they wanted. But in the capitalist society, they can have their own apps. They can, you know, be on the street. They can do, you know, they can do it with protection and pay taxes on it and all that stuff. But I'm gonna have this guy, he's gonna speak on, and he's gonna ask a question to say, with the oldest profession in the book, would it still exist under communism? And it's a short little bit I'm gonna let him talk about. So let's hear what he says. So I got this guy right here. Let me go ahead and play a little bit from him and just see if the oldest profession in the world, would it still exist under communism? So let's see.
With all that thoroughly established, would prostitution still exist under communism? I'm inclined to say no. My gut instinct when I first heard the question, a long time ago now, was to think, what would even be being exchanged, assuming that there is no currency and no one wants for necessities? Further still, without the threat of needing money or anything, why would anyone work as a prostitute? More hardline doctrinaire leftists also make the argument that prostitution isn't just exploitative in the Marxist sense, but that it is necessarily unproductive labor, which doesn't contribute to the overall well-being of a society, and therefore wouldn't have any place in any sort of collective or planned economy.
That right there. Remember, they had everybody working, and it was a collective economy that they had going on in the gulag thing. Not just the gulag, but in the communist regime, it was a collective economy. But everybody was struggling. Everybody had a hard time, and nobody was doing good. Let me try to find this other video. Now, to give an idea or a better understanding, because he had mentioned something about, you know, the need for currency was not needed. Well, I found this video, and this is a video I found to show what socialism could do to an economy's currency, and to show you how much it would devalue a currency. And with the devaluation of the currency, what could you do with this currency under a communist or socialist regime? So I'm going to show you a clip that I found, and this is a dude who does a lot of traveling, and he's in Venezuela. Now in Venezuela, they use the US dollar now, but if you know anything about Venezuela, they had a huge basically they had a huge, what is it called? Their currency basically got debased. Like, it just went, their currency just completely got debased all the way, basically. And he wanted to take $100 and see how much bolivars, which is the Venezuelan dollar, how much he could get for $100. And he had a hard time finding it because now majority of places use US dollars because their currency collapsed so much. And he's going to go in and show you how much money he can get with 100 USD for bolivars. And I'm going to show you him walking around.
As you guys...
Whoops. I'm going to show you him walking around when he gets into the store. And he's going to look at prices for things inside this store. And they're going to explain it to him. And then he's going to try to find $100 worth of their currency. And you're going to see how much it is. And then the guy is even going to say something about why it became that way. And then you can also go back to the guy who just said, with the oldest profession in the book, there would be no need for it. The currency would be so debased, like it wouldn't be a benefit to society whatsoever. We saw how bad the Bolshevik society was, allowing communism to come in and do what it does. But let's go ahead and just pay attention to this video to see what happens when your currency gets debased. So here we go. Right here we have this video. Let's take a look at this. He's inside the store with his buddy, and they're looking at different items, and he's basically gonna you know, show him that they use USD, but then also there's still pricings in Boulevard, and he'll explain it to you. So watch this.
If people ask me, can I say I'm American or it's a bad thing? It's better not to say.
Yeah.
Should I say I'm Canadian or something?
Yeah, it's all the same shit.
You'll be
gringo either way.
Yeah. I'm a gringo either way.
This is Bolivares. But this is actually
3 million. They just avoid 3 zeros.
Really?
Yeah, this is 3.5 million.
So the prices are in Bolivares, but you have to pay in dollars.
Yeah.
So nobody in this market has a Bolivares. It's all dollars. Let's ask.
Buenos días. Hermano, una pregunta. ¿Usted tiene bolívares en billete? Nada. It's almost impossible to find bolívares.
This is not going to be easy.
We proceeded to ask a few vendors if they have any bolívares or if they could even exchange the smallest amount of dollars, and it wasn't looking good.
¿Tienes algo de bolívares y nosotros te damos dólares en efectivo?
¿Qué pasa?
I asked him, he said, let's see. Me das 8 millones y te doy 10 dólares. Nada.
Nothing. Zero?
No, bro.
Next.
Mira, mi amor, una pregunta. Queremos bolívares en efectivo.
They don't have?
No, they say don't have. This is one of the best cheeses of Venezuela. You could try. It's Guayanese.
Wow. That is really good, man.
$3 per kilo. I have $5 here.
We finally found our first Bolívares bills.
So what is that?
He gave me 100,000 bolívares is like 10 cents.
So we have a long way to go to hit $100. we have a lot of work to do.
10 cents, bro. Mi pana, ¿crees que nos puedes ayudar a cambiar un poco de dólares en billetes de bolívares en efectivo? Yeah, they invite me to pass.
Can I go with you?
Yeah, you can.
Oh, we're going in the back of the shop, I guess. Oh, God. Whoa. All right, somehow we're going upstairs in the shop in the back. Hola, gracias.
And just like that, jackpot.
He's going to take out all the money that he has, so we're gonna count how much
Are you guys? Holy shit. This is insane.
Look at this.
There's more?
Yeah.
Oh my God, Dios mío.
Aquí hay 200 billetes, ¿verdad? Sí. 200 bills here. So 200 bills per 10,000, that means 2 million bolívares, so $2.
This big stack of money is $2 US.
Yeah.
Holy crap, man.
Here, the green ones are $4 because it's 20,000.
Es increíble. ¿Qué piensas?
Bueno, eso es.
Right there. Do you see what he said right there? That's socialism. Right there, he's saying it. This right here is $4. If this is $4 USD. He said, "What is this?" He said that. He said, "Man, that's a lie." He said, "That's socialism." Look at what it did to their currency, that they had to go and use another currency from a different country. And Venezuela had been had went through a huge economic downturn, and their whole currency crashed because the oil prices tanked. And then this is the outcome of it. But because of what? That's socialism. He said that this is because of socialism. This is a prime example. Your currency getting debased because of socialism. He's telling you.
Socialismo. Eso es nada.
And these ones is the biggest bill, 50,000. 200 bills per 50,000 is 10 million. 1 million per dollar approximately. So $40 plus 22, we have $62 here.
All right, is it okay if we give you dollars for all of these bolívares? Está bien. Mejor. Mejor? Better?
Yeah.
I will give him dollars right now. So how many dollars do I need to take out?
$62 is here, so
$62.
He's supposed to give you change, but you know that in Venezuela there is no change.
There's no change, so I'll just give him 70 for that. Now we have the luxury of putting all this money in the bag.
Yes.
Okay, here we go.
Fuck. I feel like in a mafia.
Dude, you can't even close the bag. I can barely close the bag. So this entire bag is full right now, Bolivares.
$62.
$62. Okay, muchísimas gracias. Hasta luego. Dude, that was insane. The first place we went, he only gave me
10 cents.
Yeah,
10 cents.
this was the first one I got. It's worth nothing, right?
Yeah, nothing.
Then we went to the bakery place. Look at this. Okay, and it's full. It goes all the way down there. Okay, and that was only 60 bucks, 62. I think we should just give up. I don't think we can. I think it's impossible.
And I hope you spend that money before tomorrow because it will worth like half.
I hope you spend that money before tomorrow because it'll be worth like half. So the currency is still devaluing rapidly. And that dude said it in the last clip. That guy right here, when he asked him, what is this? He looked at him and said, what did he say? He said, what do you think?
Bueno, eso es socialismo.
That's socialism. That's what happens. That's what happens in a social, that's what happens with socialism. And, you know, a lot of people will say socialism and Marxism are not the same thing. I mean, but he's living in socialism and he's telling you like that's what happens. Look how much money this is. And this is $4. $4. That's ridiculous. Now, saying all that just to simply say this, you don't want that in your country. You don't want to vote that into your country at all. So whoever has the voting power is going to dictate which way things go. So now we're going to take a look at another reminder of the power of the she economy and the direction that we're headed in. And we're going to watch this woman here explain how the she economy will be moving forward in dictating how money is made and how money is spent in the next coming years. So let's pull her up right here and let her explain this to you right here. Here we go.
You're gonna
try it again.
If you're a woman in this economy, you're going to want to hear this. Last week, I went to a Morgan Stanley wealth management event, and they had the chief economic strategist and the chief investment officer, both women, by the way, who had a lot to say about the future of the economy, especially as it relates to women. Just to set the scene with how far we've come, women were literally not allowed to open bank accounts until 1974. Let's start here. So we are now really leaning away from using the birth control pill, and we are more leaning towards IUDs. This means
Did you see what she already said it? We're leaning away from birth control pills and we are using IUDs.
that in addition to dropping birth rates from 2.5 in 1968 to 1.7 in 2024, we are also becoming less reliant on men. And this means by 2030, they're projecting that 45% of prime working age female women will be single, which is larger than ever before. But listen, we've been busy getting educated. Women with a bachelor's degree was 8 percentage points higher than men in 2021. Also, women are projected to make up over half of the millennial workforce in 2025. But the craziest quote I heard throughout the entire presentation is that 89% of all the wealth in the US is owned and controlled by people over the age of 55. This becomes super important because women outlive men. The average life expectancy in the US for women is 80.2 years, and the average life expectancy for men is 74.8 years. So we are about to see the largest transfer of wealth happen from the oldest generation on, and with women outliving men, we are about to be in control of a lot of money. So what does this mean for you, especially if you are a young woman? My biggest takeaway from this is no man is coming to save you. And even if a man is coming to save you, you are going to want to be financially literate, and let me tell you why. First of all, we're better at investing than men. This is actually a fact. And not just in the retail setting where you're investing your own money, also in wealth management and hedge funds, women are better investors. Number two, and this is targeted towards women under the age of 30 that live in metropolitan areas like New York, LA, Washington, DC, we're making more money than men in that age group. And obviously that's very specific to age, profession, and location. But I think we all grew up with this assumption that men are just always going to be making more money than us and that they're going to come take care of us. And that's just not really the case anymore. And if you needed a third reason, we most definitely put the she in she economy. Women are now projected to control 2/3 of discretionary spending by 2028.
Okay, now she did a good breakdown. She did a breakdown right here where she spoke on the birth rate. I want you to hear her sentiment when she spoke when she mentioned the declining birth rate. Listen to what she said.
2.5 in 1968 to 1. The birth control pill, and we are more. Let's start here. So we are now really leaning away from using the birth control pill, and we are more leaning towards IUDs. This means that in addition to dropping birth rates from 2.5 in 1968 to 1.7 in 2024, we are also becoming less reliant on men. And this means by 2030, they are projecting that 45% of prime working age female women will be single, which is larger than ever before. But listen, we've been busy getting educated. Women with a bachelor's degree was 8 percentage points higher than men in 2021. Also, women are projected to make up over half of the millennial workforce.
Did you hear about the birth rate declining? Did you hear her sentiment? She didn't give a shit. She could care less. She was like, I don't give a damn about that birth rate. Like, we getting educated. We getting to the money. She said right here, we finna be doing what?
Women outlive men. The average life expectancy in the US for women is 80.2 years, and the average life expectancy for men is 74.8 years. So we are about to see the largest transfer of wealth happen from the oldest generation on, and with women outliving men, we are about to be in control of a lot of money. So what does...
That's it. That's all she hears. We about to get this paper. She don't give a damn about nothing else. She's like, hey, I don't care about the decline in birth rate. That's what it is. You know, we don't need men to take care of us. The she economy, that's the direction that they headed in. Now, let's go ahead and read some of these comment sections. It says, I make 6 figures, 2 degrees, just bought my own house. I'm single because I can't find a man who can match my ambition and keep up with me. Their loss, not mine. Goal for the years to get all A's in my master program, read 25 books, grow a phenomenal garden, spend almost no extra money unless it's small businesses or thrifting. This one right here says, so this means I am, it says, starting my doctorate program in psychology this August. I'm an attorney that does wills. I will also be curious about how the change in inheritance will affect women in generations to come. It was not too long ago when the parents would give everything to their sons. You see that? They're trying to change the inheritance from over to the sons to the women. They're like, okay, well, now that women are going to be passing away with this money, or when the current oldest generation passes away, can we shift that inheritance from the son to the daughters? They're coming in, and so the she economy is going in that direction. That's the direction that they're heading in, and I want you to understand it, accept it. This is what it is. This piece of hair is going crazy. Understand it and accept it for what it is. Don't fight it. Don't hate it. Accept it, because that's the direction it's going in. And if this is the direction it's going in, whoever controls the money is going to make the political decisions as well. And also, if the women spend a lot of money, so the prices of everything is going to keep going up. That's not going to slow down. They're going to keep spending. So understand it. It is what it is. There's nothing wrong with it. Spending on material things, no. Spending on educations and ETFs, check. I live in a large metro area, and I can tell I haven't dated any men that have made more than me. I'm really curious how all of this now plays out with the Equal Opportunity Act gone now. Finance queen, 2/3 of discretionary spending is insane, and that's why they are so mad. Let's see. What does it say? The kind of data we need, me studying accounting right now. We are busy being educated and unbothered by man. I mean, all this right here. Hell yeah, let's go. I love to see it, ladies. I'm obsessed with you in this video. Let's go, girls. Generational wealth for women, the she economy. This is the direction that everything is headed in. Just understand it and know that this is where it's going. So if you understand where it's going, then you understand that if the power lies into a certain demographic and things start to go either capitalist more or communist more, you can understand how to navigate. That's what I want you to understand, is how to navigate. How would you navigate? Because you're seeing how things would be ran if it's a capitalist society, and you see how things are how things would be ran if it's a communism society. Just be aware and know how to navigate and move and pivot on what you have to do. You want to still take advantage of the capitalism, or do you want to be a victim of the communism? Because you want to know how to navigate if things go one way or another. That's the thing you want to focus on, because the she economy is going to take you there. Now, there's still some women out there that see things a certain way. So we're going to have this lady break it down, and she's going to speak about the economy, and she's going to give you her opinion on the ideology. Let's let her say it. Here we go.
Poll release shows that for the very first time in history, Democrats actually favor socialism over capitalism, and that is something that should be absolutely terrifying to everybody if you know anything about socialism and how it kills a country from the inside. I've never seen people trying to risk their lives on a raft in order to leave a capitalist country to go to a socialist one. In fact, when socialists are offered a one-way ticket to their favorite socialist country, they don't want to take up that offer because they know how absolutely horrific it is. You could just look at what's happening in Venezuela, where they have been pushed to the brink of starvation, to where they are so desperate that they are eating zoo animals. Anybody who has survived a socialist country would tell you that it is an absolute hellscape. And I find it interesting that the left always wants to shit talk the government, and then they want to hand the government even more power. They hate democracy, they hate the founding principles of this country, and their rhetoric and their ideology honestly has no place here. You could say what you want and you can advocate for what you want, but you do not get to come to this country. You do not get to reap the benefits of this beautiful country and then want to destroy it from the inside out. We're just not going to allow that to happen, because it is evil in its purest form. A new Gallup poll.
All right, well, okay, we'll give her a round of applause. She's halfway right. So I give her a round of applause for that. You know what I mean? She's halfway right. Yeah, it is evil when you sit down and look at it, And we're supposed to be a republic, not a democracy, but she halfway right. I get what she's saying, and she's on point. I've never heard of anybody getting on a lifeboat and leaving a capitalist country for a socialist country myself. I've never heard that, so she's 100% right on that. So there's some people who still have the ideology, but she said that the Democrats are more socialist or communist, whatever you want to call it, than they are capitalists. So that's one thing that I want to bring to your attention, if that's true. And that video was from 9/16, I believe, this year. So was that a month ago? But if that's how the Democrats are moving, then you should already be ready and know that whenever they get into power, that's probably which way things are going to swing. So you want to be ready for it. And that's why I always try to tell you, keep your head down for the next 5 or 10 years and grind super hard. That's why you see me up now, grinding, giving you this video. Stay up and just focus and just keep your head down and grind while you have the opportunity in a capitalist society. That's what you want to be doing, is grinding and taking advantage of the opportunity while it's here. You never know when it can change. It can change at any moment. You know what I mean? Now you have people who explain the difference between communism and socialism, and sometimes they're hit or miss, and sometimes people are intertwined communism and socialism and try to make them seem like they're two different things. Yeah, they have their differences. They're not 100% the same, but in my humble opinion, socialism is just a transition to communism. But we're going to have this nice, pretty looking chocolatey thing right here. She's going to go ahead and break down capitalism versus socialism. So let's let her take it away. I ain't going to let her talk the whole time. It's 4 minutes. She's going to talk for a little bit, then I'm going to shut her off.
This is a very high level breakdown. I am not your econ professor. I'm just trying to explain why some of us heard about communism and said, hey, wait a damn minute. Because despite what they told you, it's not just communism bad and capitalism good. Because sometimes the truth is just messier. Socialism and communism believe that the people, not businesses, not corporations, not billionaires, should own the systems that we rely on. Just think energy, housing, healthcare, schools, transit, food production. But here's the key difference. Socialism wants to spread power more fairly. Communism wants to abolish it altogether. In socialism, you can still have private property, small businesses, competition. In communism, everything is publicly owned. No private ownership of anything major. In socialism, wealth is redistributed. In communism, profit doesn't exist. Socialism tries to fix capitalism. Communism wants to replace the whole thing. And that alone scared the hell out of empires. The roots of socialism trace all the way back to the 1800s, after the Industrial Revolution exposed how ugly capitalism could actually be. Child labor, 18-hour shift, no safety laws, no pay equity. Thinkers like Charles Fourier and Robert Owens. They said we need fairness, regulation, and public goods. But in 1848, Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels dropped the Communist Manifesto.
All right, so as you can see, she said there's some ways to socialism versus communism. And like I said, I look at socialism as a transition into communism. Like, it's a way out of capitalism without going straight into communism, kind of giving you that segue, that between, like, oh, this isn't all the way bad. You know, it's not all the way good, but it's not all the way bad. This can actually be beneficial. You know, it's kind of like that, you know, you don't want to go all the way one direction, but you're headed in that direction. It's just like, now that we're here, socialism, we just gonna slowly turn that pot up until, you know, we reach 10, you know, 1, 1.5, 2, 2.3, 2.5, 3, 3.2, 3.5, 3.7, 4. You know what I mean? You're just gonna slowly get to communism via socialism. Because as we just seen, that Venezuelan dude looked at his currency. He said, "What is this?" He said, "It's socialism." You know what I mean? He called it out right there. You know, and in this thing right here, what does she have on here? I mean, what is this? There was something that I wanted to read here. There was somebody, socialism is more like a mixed economy. Government oversight of utilities, corporations can exist but are regulated, workers' rights are protected. But in the end, what I have observed, every ism had a wild card. That wild card is human nature. That's actually a good point. Where is it at right here? This is what this person said right here. That made a lot of sense. Straight up. That ism had a wild card, and that wild card is human in nature. Some people hate socialism, but they love the fire department, the roads, public education, and museums. Okay. I'm all for socialism, fed up with capitalism. Okay. There has never been a communist state anywhere in the world. Communism is a classless society, and there is no state. Communism cannot happen until imperialism has been destroyed. Communism has been sabotaged anywhere it started to work. So she's saying, like, it. I don't know if she's pro or against. History professor here. Communism in its pure form, as presented by Marx and Engels, can only exist in the absence of capitalism. And since capitalism has never ceased to exist, there has never been a communist nation. What we've seen in the past are variations of authoritarianism with elements of socialism and capitalism. That's why we say Leninist communism or Maoist communism. They aren't actually communist. If only people would listen to those of us that have spent our entire career studying and writing on these issues. It's almost as if we're experts, but no. Let's listen to Uncle John, who heard something on a podcast, so it must be true. Possibly, but sir, what I've learned in life is that with human nature, people lie. People will pick a side and lie for that side. People don't have the best interests of other people at heart, and they will tell a lie to get people to believe their lie. People are full of shit. That's what life has taught me. So even with even with you being a quote unquote expert, because, you know, you act like other people can't read a book. Maybe you read more books on the situation, but all because you read more books doesn't mean you have a better understanding. All because you read more books doesn't mean that you are, you know, not an agent for a certain agenda and trying to persuade people so you can indoctrinate them and try to gaslight them out of believing what they, you know, trying to gaslight them out of reading for themselves and actually using critical thinking skills. So, you know, to sit here and say that instead of just telling people to go read it for themselves, lets you know where your heart is. So I call bullshit on this statement. So watch out for people that talk like this. I'm an expert, my ass. Don't ever let nobody tell you that they're expert. Yeah, expert, cool, you know. take that with a grain of salt, read what they read, and then, you know, see if you can figure out what they figure out. Ain't nobody smarter than you. All right, so now we have another one right here. This one, I like to do stuff like this because even me, when I used to work at a hospital, I know this girl, she was a respiratory therapist and she was from Cuba. And she had explained to me about communism and how she lived in communism physically herself and how bad it was and why she came to America. And she's like, now I'm here. And this is why Biden was president. She was like, I'm starting to see communism again. And she said, it's hella scary. Like, I left that. And now I'm starting to see that again here. It's scary. She don't want to go back to that. And she explained it to me, how poor she was, how hard life was. And what's crazy is watching the video that I just had up here, you know, it closer aligns to what she was saying. But this video I'm going to show you here, this is 3 different people, and they come from 3 different countries. And as you see here, we have Cuba, communism in Cuba, in Russia, and in China. And all these people lived in it, and they're going to give you, you know, their viewpoint of what they experienced. And they're going to tell you what life is like in these countries where they actually lived. Because it's best to hear it from people who live there as opposed to people who explain it about not living there. Kind of like what I'm doing. I'll just call it out. I call a spade a spade. I'll call it out. But here we go. Let's listen to these women and see what they say about living in a country that had communism, but they're not there no more. Here we go.
Talk about how communism was in Cuba, in China, and in Russia or USSR. State control economy. So in Cuba, the economy is controlled by the state. Nowadays, you are allowed to have businesses, but the taxes are so high and you have to pay a percentage back to the state. And at the end of the day, it's not really your business. It's always going to be a state-owned business.
Communist China is still the same. It's controlled by the state, and any private entity that comes into the country and wants to establish as a business, the state has to have a 51% ownership, even though the state has not put any money into it, but they still control the outcome and the input on it.
Yeah, so the government was controlling every business. I don't think people were allowed to have any businesses. Everything was government. People didn't have anything. They didn't own anything. So it was similar.
Political opposition. So in Cuba, political opposition was not tolerated. So you cannot talk bad about the government. You cannot go out there and riot. You're not supposed to do that. People have sometimes done that and they end up in jail. How about in China?
What is the political opposition? That doesn't exist in China. There's simply none.
What happens if you do decide to...
You mysteriously disappear.
Same here.
How about in USSR?
Same here, you cannot, they take your phone, they can, spying on you. You cannot say anything.
In Cuba, they used to open up the mail as well. Yeah, so whenever you would receive mail from the U.S., they would open it up and then seal it back. Did you guys see
that? The same.
Okay.
The same.
All right. How about surveillance? So in Cuba, we have something called CDR, which basically it's one person that is basically like a spy, like a snitch that tells the government whenever someone is doing something that seems a little shady or a little anti-communist. And
that was the main thing for China as well. Okay. But now with technology, they have the face recognition surveillance camera all over the street in China, mainly in the mainland China. Not sure so much about Hong Kong yet, but that's what we're seeing.
Right, and some people cover their faces sometimes because they don't want to be...
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
So everything that they just explained was basically verbatim in this video that we just watched. Because remember, in the Gulag system, they had people that was snitching on other people in the Gulag system. Remember, they had other people and other informants in the Gulag system, and people were scared to talk because somebody might snitch on them and get them hemmed up. So what they saying checks out. And they live there, and they're telling you like, hey, this is what it is. They said that government owns anything. You will own nothing. And you ever heard that one guy say you will own nothing and like it? Where you think that come from? They said that they even open your mail sometimes. If they see your mail come from somewhere, open your mail. You can't speak out against nothing. You can't speak out against the regime. Like all these things, they're telling you like this is what it is. So now we're going to watch this girl right here. She's going to speak on communism, and she's going to speak on her viewpoints of communism. I'm not going to let her speak the whole time, but It's like a 3-minute video. I'm going to let her talk for a little bit, and then I'm going to interject. So let's go ahead and let her speak her 2 cents, and let's see what she got to say. Here we go.
What system is better than capitalism? Communism. So this is a scary word for a lot of people. It sounds really like, oh my God, even for me a few months ago before I learned what it actually meant. So I completely understand when people are like, communism doesn't work. Communism always fails. Communism always leads to authoritarianism, you know, because that's the propaganda that has been spread about communism. Specifically because capitalism exists, we aren't allowed to live self-sustainably. We aren't able to be self-sufficient. We have to rely on the backs of laborers and workers everywhere that aren't even benefiting from the products that they make and produce and work on and distribute. So really anything is better than the system of meritocracy and authority and hierarchy where someone is in charge and there has to be CEOs and there has to be business owners and there has to be someone that tells everybody what to do. Whereas communism is it's not it doesn't go up. It goes side to side. So whereas in capitalism, there has to be the separation, there has to be classes, there has to be rich people and poor people, there has to be the top and the bottom, there has to be the ones that are on the inside, and there has to be the ones that are on the outside and marginalized.
You can clearly see she does not know what she's talking about. She doesn't know what she's talking about at all. We'll go back to actually, we're going to go back to this lady right here. Remember this lady right here? Her right here. She was a Marxist feminist. And she knew that there were 2 different kinds. You had the bougie kind and you had the working class kind. You had the bougie kind of working class feminist communist, and you had the working class kind of feminist communist. There's 2 different kinds. And then this lady over here said that you got to have somebody in charge. There's always going to be somebody in charge. You're not escaping somebody being in charge. There's always somebody in charge. What is Marxist feminism? Let's read it real quick. Right here. It analyzes the ways. Marxist feminism is a philosophical. Well, this is. You know what? Let's find the word communism because she didn't say. Feminism. She didn't say Marxist feminism. She said communism. So let's find communism in this thing real quick. Let's see. Is it in here? You would think it would be in here. No. Okay. It doesn't say it in here. So where's communism? It should be in here somewhere. I should be able to find it real quick. Communism should be in here. Shouldn't be hard to find, but of course it's going to be hard to find when I'm talking about it. Actually, let me get this back up for you real quick. There it is. All right, let's see right here. Communism. Let's see what communism is, because she said communism is not, but I want to see exactly what it is. Let's see. You had the left. We don't want the left. We just want C people. Where are the C people? You know what? I'll type it in so we'll have it. So where is it at? Right here? No. All right, cool. So I'm going to type it in. And then we're going to listen to that woman talk again. So here we go. Typing the word in. And then we're going to look at the definition of what it says. And then we're going to see what she says. All right, so here we go. I'm going to go to Britannica. Excuse me, I had to sneeze. We're going to go to a Britannica. And we're going to see exactly what it is. All right, here we go. So we have the Britannica here. I'm going to go right next to this lady. Okay. I'm going to have to excuse me for 1 second. Hold on 2 seconds. Give me 1 moment. Okay. There we go. Music cut off. All right, here we go. So we're up here. So I got communism. I found it in the Britannica, as you can see up there. Maybe you can't. So we're gonna look at it right here. Communism, as you can see it. Let's see. Sheesh, there it goes. Communism, political and economic doctrine that aims to replace private property and a profit-based economy with public ownership. What is public ownership? And communal control of at least the major means of production, for example, mines, mills, and factories, in the natural resources of a society. Communism is thus a form of socialism, a higher and more advanced form. So it's still socialism, just transitioning over. It's the full-blown transition. According to his advocates, exactly how communism differs from socialism has long been a matter of debate, but the distinctions rest largely on the communist adherence to revolutionary socialism of Karl Marx. All right, so here we go. Public enterprise business wholly partly owned by the state and controlled through a public authority. There it is right there. There it is right there. So when this girl over here is talking out her ass, listen to what she says.
Sustainably, we aren't able to be self-sufficient. We have to rely on the backs of laborers and workers everywhere that aren't even benefiting from the products that they make and produce and work on and distribute. So really anything is better than the system of meritocracy and authority and hierarchy where.
So she doesn't want order.
Someone is in charge and there has to be CEOs and there has to be business owners and there has to be someone that tells everybody what to do.
Okay, so there's no CEOs, there's no business owners. What is a public, where is it right here? Where is it? I just had it. Here we go. Communism, right here. A political and economic doctrine that aims to replace private property and a profit-based economy with public ownership and communal control of at least major means of production. Economy with public ownership. What is public ownership? Public ownership is what? A business organization wholly or partly owned by the state and controlled through a public authority. There's no way around it. Like, some public enterprises are placed under public ownership because for social reasons, it is thought the service or product should be provided by a state monopoly. So clearly she doesn't know what she's talking about.
Whereas communism is it's not it doesn't go up. It goes side to side. So whereas in capitalism, there has to be the separation. There has to be classes. There has to be rich people and poor people. There has to be the top and the bottom. There has to be the ones that are on the inside, and there has to be the ones that are on the outside and marginalized. That it has to exist in capitalism because that's what it's based on. Capitalism and colonization and racism and all that go hand in hand. So what we had before colonization was a system where everybody, even if you were born disabled, physically disabled, mentally disabled, even if you were developmentally stunted, even if you weren't.
I'm not going to hear the rest of this. She don't know what she's talking about. That's the bottom line. She doesn't know what she's talking about at all. She's just talking out of her ass. Not very intelligent. Now we have another person right here. This girl, she's going to speak on, I guess she's from China or she lives in China. I don't know. But she's going to tell us that what we don't know about China. So we're going to look at what we don't know about China, and she's going to let us know what China is. So here we go. We're going to let her talk. Let's go.
You might not know this, but China is not a communist country. When it's about China, so many people always say communist this, communist that, but do they even know what communism actually is? They probably just keep repeating what they've been told. In theory, communism is a stateless, classless, moneyless society where everything is collectively owned. There's no private property or government. Does that sound like China to you?
Okay, let's see. The CCP, Communist Party of China, Chinese Communist Party, CCP. The CCP won Chinese civil war against whoever they wanted against in October 1940. The CCP since governed China and has had sole control over the country's armed forces and law enforcement. As of 2024, the CCP has more than 100 million members, making it the second largest political party by membership worldwide. Yeah. So you're telling me, as a Marxist-Leninist party, the Chinese Communist Party is organized based on democratic centralism. What is democratic centralism? Democratic centralism is a Leninist organization principle most communist parties in which decisions are made by a process of vigorous and open debate amongst party membership, and the action is subsequently binding upon all members of the party. A principle that entails open policy discussions on conditions of unity among party members upholding agreement. The highest body of the CCP is the National Congress. So she says that China is not a communist country, but it's the Chinese Communist Party is the founding and ruling party of the People's Republic of China. So we have another one here talking, but remember right here. Remember what this woman said. Do you remember what she said? I don't know if she's in China. She could be in China. Remember what she said.
The same is controlled by the state, and any private entity that comes into
This
the
is
country
what she
wants to
said.
stop.
They didn't own anything. They were so similar.
Political opposition. So in Cuba, political have sometimes done that and they end up in jail. How about in China?
What is the political opposition? That doesn't exist in China. There's simply none.
What happens if you do decide to...
You mysteriously disappear.
There you go. So she might not be able to talk if she's in China. She probably can't say anything. Then again, I don't know. I don't think they got TikTok in China, but I think they do. But whatever the case may be, she might be in China and she just can't speak out. Even though in the name it says Chinese Communist Party, but she probably can't speak out because it goes inside with what this woman says. You cannot speak against the regime. But then if she's not in China and she's in a different country, then she's just ignorant. All right, so we got this lady right here. She's going to say, I just love when communists use that talking point of, and let's see what talking point she's talking about. So here we go.
I just love when communists use that talking point of, oh, but real communism was never really tried. And then all I say is, oh, well, but real capitalism hasn't really been tried either. The difference is that the almost communism, just the idea of a communist society, killed millions of people because they didn't have food to eat. And on the other hand, almost capitalism has lifted billions out of poverty. Yes, billions with a B, because if you know a little bit about history, you're going to know that the reason why we're not all poor, except the king or the president or people in government, is actually because of capitalism. And this is why every single time communists or leftists, they try to take power, like what was happening here in America, they try to make everybody poor. Of course, they don't say that. They say, oh, we need to share. We want to share and create an equal society. That's their excuse. But you see the results. The result is people are poor in the United States after 4 years of leftists trying to destroy this beautiful country.
That's true. Let me give her a round of applause for that one, because after that, after those stimmy checks and everything, and all the immigrants came in, all that stuff, like, and they came with that new normal, shout out to her. She right on that. Straight up. She 100% right on that. That is a correctamundo. Exactly. She's 100% right. The new normal was after the strong flu 19. I've lived here my whole life, and I'm telling you right now, prior to the strong flu 19, I mean, things were still getting a little bit pricey, but it was nothing like it is now. I mean, it just shot up in the past 5 or 6 years. Things have exponentially just like went crazy. It's like I've never seen before in my life. And they're like new normal, new normal. Like, what the hell you mean new normal? Walmart closes now. Walmart never used to close. That was a 24/7 thing, never closed, always open. Why does Walmart close now? Because after the strong flu 19, they knew these immigrants was coming in. They didn't want them stealing all wee hours of the night at the store. To me, that makes sense. You know what I mean? They got these, I mean, it was like perfectly planned. It's like, let's start closing this down, because when y'all bring them immigrants in, they're going to start stealing. So if this is open 24/7, we can't have that. We got to actually start closing the store. New normal. The stimmy checks came in. What happened to the stimmy checks? Well, then it had a reverberating effect, because the ripple effect went out years later. Inflation, or devaluing of the currency. You know what I'm saying? Like, all this different things were happening. So yes, so she's right. She's 100% right on that. Now, let's see. We have this other lady right here who's going to speak on how she escaped communism. And she's going to tell you her experiences as well. Now, this one, I mean, this one has a lady in here that I don't like. This woman right here. So hopefully this woman looks legit. She could be a crisis actor, but she seems legit. So take this one with a grain of salt. But listen to this one. Listen to this lady talk about communists. This is a short one, but hear what she has to say. Here we go.
Professor Xi Van Fleet, author and survivor of Mao's revolution. Xi, you know something about socialism and communism.
Yes, and I always tell people, capitalism can't guarantee that everyone will be wealthy, but communism can guarantee that we are all poor. And that's where I experienced in China. And we have to educate the young people.
He's talking about state-owned businesses back in 2021, Mamdani, and a lot of free stuff. What's your take on this, and what's your warning tonight to America?
Yeah, I want people to know he is more than just the typical woke Marxist. He is a full-fledged communist. I don't know whether the New York voters understand what it means. That seize means of production. That means abolish private property. That means the state will take over businesses, capital, land, and the resources. And that's the place I came from.
Absolutely, Xi. Thank you very.
So she checks out, and she's basically speaking on the same thing that this lady was saying over here. She's saying the same thing that this lady was saying over here. Everything she's saying checks out and lines up. Okay? Now, there's another lady I want you to look at, and she's going to speak on, because that one lady said China, another lady said Cuba, another lady said USSR. So we have another lady that we're going to take a look at, and she's going to speak on her situation, on how she basically escaped her situation in a place where she was at, basically dealing with the same type of regime. So let's continue. Here we go.
So when you were 13, you escaped. Tell us what it was like. First of all, where did you escape to? You escaped to China?
Yeah.
And how did you get across?
It was frozen river in March, end of March in 2007.
So you travel on the frozen river?
Yeah. And we luckily didn't get shot by the guards. And when we got into the other side of the riverbank of China, that's when Mom got raped. And then they took us in a house. And they were like turning me around like a slave market, right? They checked my teeth and my body structure. And somehow being virgin is very precious in China. So they sold my mom for around $65. And it's 21st century. And they sold me less than $300. And they sold us separately.
So when you were...
So she was in North Korea. And she escaped North Korea. She has a big story. You can go look her up. Just type in the girl who escaped North Korea. She's talking about how she left North Korea, which is if you don't know anything about North Korea, just type it in and you'll find out real quick that North Korea is a huge communist place. And she went for China. Now she ran for China and she was trying to, basically escape to China, but you saw, she got sold into China. But let's get a quick crash course on North Korea if you know nothing of North Korea. Let me show you this quick video and just listen to what they say starting the video off. Here we go.
Picture a country where you can be killed for watching a foreign movie, a place where the leader's personal life is so crazy and wild that it sounds like a movie script. This is a land where millions of people are starving while their leader lives like a king with private jets, luxury cars, and a secret army of beautiful women. Welcome to North Korea, the most closed-off country on earth. Here, 25 million people live like prisoners in their own nation, completely cut off from the outside world. What shocking secrets hide behind the walls of this mysterious kingdom? And what is the real story of how their leaders live while their people suffer? North Korea is ruled by one of the world's craziest dictators, a man whose personal life would shock you. If you want to know what really happens inside the world's most secret country, stay with us until the end.
Just that intro alone. That intro alone matched everything with the video that we just watched. That intro alone matched with with this video that we watched earlier. Right here. That intro matched with this right here. Now I don't know if everybody in that country is starving. They might be exaggerating a little bit. However, in North Korea, you can't have you can get whacked for watching a foreign movie. Like, you are 100% control with what you watch. You are 100% control with what you say. You're 100%. You can't. I mean, there's nothing you can do. That's a communist regime. But yet you have people that speak on it like it's a positive thing. Like right here, we have a lady talking about being in communism in Vietnam, and listen to her. Now listen to her. And these are people that actually lived in communism. They all have similar stories about what it was like living there. Now, when we listen to other people like this, she hasn't lived in it. She's just like, oh, from what I just learned. But these are people who've been in it. And this girl, either she lives in it, or if she doesn't live in it anymore, and she just, lives in a different country or America or something, I don't know, that nose ring might give her away. It might make her a little bit more dumb. But listen to what this lady says about her when she lived in communism. Listen to this one. We're almost done.
Trong Sài Gòn, khi Cộng sản vô trong Sài Gòn thì bày ra cái trò mà kiểm kê tài sản. Cộng sản vô kiểm kê tài sản của ba tôi 3 lần và chở đi. Ba tôi buồn. Ba tôi chết lúc 53 tuổi. Tôi đã chở tất cả tài sản xưởng dệt của ba tôi. Ba tôi có cái xưởng dệt mà chở công nhân đi làm việc mỗi ngày. Còn mẹ tôi và chị em tôi ở lại thì bị nó tịch thâu xưởng dệt với nhà cửa hết trơn. Tôi rất là tôi khi mà tôi bước chân lên nước Mỹ rồi, bây giờ tôi nghĩ đây là cái quê hương thứ hai của tôi. Tôi phải bảo vệ và tôi rất là thương yêu. Chính phủ Hoa Kỳ đã bảo vệ tất cả những người tị nạn như tôi.
As you can see, she's come from a different country, of Vietnam. And she can understand what communism is and the pain that is caused her. What happens when a state rules over you? Which, whenever a state rules over you, it seems like it goes hand in hand with this right here. When a state rules over you, it seems like it goes hand in hand with this right here. It forced all its people, great, small, rich and poor, free and slave, so that they could not buy or sell unless they had the mark. It's like they're explaining to you the regime in the Bible, what you could possibly live under if your people are ruled or conquered underneath it. It's explaining it to you. It's trying to tell you, because it's the same story in the Bible over and over and over and over again. The Israelites didn't want to be ruled by God, or they didn't want to, own their own land and tend their own land and grow their own food and do their own stuff. They always wanted a king or somebody to rule over them. So every time they did, this was the outcome right here. Every time they got enslaved to another, government, king, pharaoh. And it just keeps happening over and over and over and over. It's like you don't learn your lesson. When do you learn your lesson? They never learned. Now we have this last one right here. This man lived through communism in Albania. And he's going to speak to him right here. So let's go ahead and go over this one. Listen to what this man says to this guy's the one that's from Albania. He's talking to this young gentleman right here. And listen to what he says to him. Here we go.
Nella mia vita, come hai visto, tu non avete vissuto il comunismo voi, il comunismo è troppo brutto. Sì, la povertà. Perché nel tempo del comunismo, ma anche in queste parole non potevamo parlare insieme, perché
Did you see that?
Insieme, perché ma anche in queste
Not even these words we could speak to each other.
parole non potevamo parlare insieme, perché
because they'll put us directly in jail. You can't even speak certain words. Why? It ties in with this right here, right? Do you remember this? It ties in with this right here. You can't speak certain words. Why? If you speak anti-communist, you own land, you own a business, priests speaking all that hope in religion, you can't do that. You're going to be marked and they're going to come and kill you. And he said, and he told him, living in communism, we couldn't even have this conversation because they'll throw us in jail.
That clip you just watched was of a man that lived through communist dictatorship in Albania. And I have one question for self-proclaimed communists that live in America or other free places. How many people is it going to take that live in communist dictatorships to tell you how bad it is? For you to understand that this way of living doesn't work, at least not for the population. This is literally handing your rights over to the government. And I don't understand how people can't see this. And if you don't start to see this, then the same thing is going to happen to America.
And he is correct. Now, I said all that just to say this right here. The she economy that we live in America is based off of someone like this.
You're one.
You got two kind of people. Remember, you have the bougie feminist communist up here, and then you got the working class feminist communist down here. This feminist or this communist don't give a damn about this communist. This one ain't smart enough to comprehend what this communist is going through. And then again, I don't want to call this woman a communist. I can't say that because I don't know if she is. But I'm using her as an example if she was a bougie communist or bourgeois communist. This one don't care about this one. And hell, this one doesn't even know what she's talking about. But there's two different kinds of communists. There's a working class and there's a bougie class. And then the she economy that we're going into, as we've seen, and that we know about, women are going to be the driving force, and wherever the money goes is the direction that the politics go in. So if you have the she economy and women like this that are dominating it and that are winning in the she economy, and what's in right here, you have $31.5 trillion in the she economy. That's which way we're headed. That's where we're going. So you need to understand these things. You need to understand the concept of what's at stake here and the power that the she economy has in dictating if we go to communism or remain in capitalism. And that's what I want you to get out of all this. And I'm going to let her talk one more time so she can break down to you the numbers and the driving force and the power that they have behind them. And how much they don't give a damn about men and how much they don't give a damn about the birth rate declining. They focused on one thing and one thing only. That is making money. But let's let her talk. Here we go. Excuse me. Focus on two things and two things only. Making money and power. But let's let her talk.
women in this economy, you're going to want to hear this. Last week, I went to a Morgan Stanley wealth management event, and they had the chief economic strategist and the chief investment officer, both women, by the way, who had a lot to say about the future of the economy, especially as it relates to women. Just to set the scene with how far we've come, women were literally not allowed to open bank accounts until 1974. Let's start here. So we are now really leaning away from using the birth control pill, and we are more leaning towards IUDs. This means that in addition to dropping birth rates from 2.5 in 1968 to 1.7 in 2024, we are also becoming less reliant on men. And this means by 2030, they're projecting that 45% of prime working age female women will be single, which is larger than ever before. But listen, we've been busy getting educated. Women with a bachelor's degree was 8 percentage points higher than men in 2021. Also, women are projected to make up over half of the millennial workforce in 2025. But the craziest quote I heard throughout the entire presentation is that 89% of all the wealth in the US is owned and controlled by people over the age of 55. This becomes super important because women outlive men. The average life expectancy in the US for women is 80.2 years, and the average life expectancy for men is 74.8 years. So we are about to see the largest transfer of wealth happen from the oldest generation on, and with women outliving men, we are about to be in control of a lot of money. So what does this mean for you, especially if you are a young woman? My biggest takeaway from this is no man is coming to save you. And even if a man is coming to save you, you are going to want to be financially literate, and let me tell you why. First of all, we're better at investing than men. This is actually a fact. And not just in the retail setting where you're investing your own money, also in wealth management and hedge funds, women are better investors. Number two, and this is targeted towards women under the age of 30 that live in metropolitan areas like New York, LA, Washington, DC, we're making more money than men in that age group. And obviously that's very specific to age, profession, and location. But I think we all grew up with this assumption that men are just always going to be making more money than us and that they're going to come take care of us. And that's just not really the case anymore. And if you needed a third reason, we most definitely put the she in she economy. Women are now projected to control 2/3 of discretionary spending by 2028.
They're projected to control 2/3 of discretionary spending. They're going to dictate where this world goes, whether this country goes to communism or capitalism. All right? If the powers remain in the hands of what they deem to be a hierarchy that they can't stand, or some made up equality that doesn't exist in their head. But this is for you to understand and to accept and to put your head down for the next 5 or 10 years or 15 years and grind your ass off and stay motivated, and to know what your next plan needs to be. You have to know what your next plan is going to be, because you don't want to be stuck in a situation you can't get out of. You want to be able to move when you see communism coming your way. You're like, I'm dipping. You don't want to be stuck somewhere where you're in a communist area, because you see how it can be. You've heard people tell you what it's like. You don't want to be stuck there. And hell, you don't want to be broke there, because you ain't getting out until it's over. So keep that in mind. And hopefully this helped you out and gave you some insight and some news that you could use, man. And that's going to be it for today's show. Thank y'all for tuning into today's show. Today was going to be a long one. I ain't never doing a video. I ain't never doing a live stream this late ever again, because I am tired as hell. So thank y'all so much for tuning in, man. I'll catch y'all later. We'll run some clips on this to get them out for shorts and stuff like that. But yeah, I'll catch y'all. I don't know when I'll be back on again. I'm going to try to get some in. Maybe it's tomorrow, the day after tomorrow. Just depends on how my week goes. But we'll see. In the meantime, I'll pop out shorts and stuff like that. But we'll take care, man. Thank y'all for tuning in. I love y'all. Take care and peace.
Thank you for watching D. Elliott Fitness live stream. Goodbye.
I'd rather be in the studio than in jail or on the street. Talking the wrong, coming off your teeth. Got that one hit
quit and knock you off your feet. It's big R, baby, I'm out some meat. Pockets chunky like cottage cheese. Real nigga, I just gotta be. Smoking weed that don't gotta see. Used to be a hustler prodigy. I love when people say they proud of me. I'm eating good, smoking broccoli. Taking over blocks like Monopoly. Only fuck the ones that's my policy. Most of these hoes tryna cause a scene. Like niggas mad they not on the team. See, I got bread, then bought a dream. The game on lock, and I got the keys like Jay. My fame won't stop, no, the only thing I'm chasing. The game